Hello everyone, and welcome to Crime in Court. My name is Heather, and we are watching or rewatching for some of us the 1993 Menendez brothers trial. So, this is California versus Erik and Lyle Menendez on trial for the homicides of their parents, Kitty and Jose. The homicides took place in August of 1989. So at this point, when we're watching the trial, they've already been in prison for 4 years. At this current day, they've been in prison for 35 years. So let that sink in. A lot of KILLers don't even get that much time. But they were put in prison for life without the possibility of parole. And we are taking a second look at their trial from 93 and evaluating it from today's perspective. Back in 93, this kind of thing wasn't talked about. Boy on boy or man on man SA wasn't talked about nearly at all. And to have it, so in this high profile case and to be a defense, to have that part of your defense, it was just, I think, really hard for some people to buy that defense. And even today, I think people are just like, no, they blew away their parents. They don't get any justice, or blah, blah, blah. They have to rot away. But people don't think about what their situation was like and how bad it was to even get to the point where they wanted to they didn't, okay, let me take that back. They didn't want to take their parents' life. There was no intention ever to take their parents' life. They purchased the guns in this case so that they could protect themselves. It was for self-defense because they were afraid of their parents. They happened to use the guns on the night that they did because there was a threat that Jose was going to be essaying Erik that night. He told him to go to his room and said, I'd be up there. I'll be up there shortly. Wait for me, which Erik knew what that meant. And he started walking towards the stairs. Lyle's like, nope, don't go up the stairs. Dad, you're not going to touch him. Dad says, don't you tell me what I'm going to do. He's my son. And that's kind of where things escalated, and the boys felt imminent fear for their lives and took action by taking the parents' lives first. So that is the story from the defense. The prosecution says they were just cold-blooded KI double Lers and they wanted the parents' money, which we've watched many segments now with Erik and Lyle on the stand, and I don't think they're acting. I really believe things that they're saying about the maltreatment that they endured during the time that they lived with their parents. And um, I don't think you can act that well. Like, you can't fake that. You can't fake those emotions on the stand that they are feeling. And I just don't see them as the cold-blooded, merciless, KI double Ling type. So let's get started. I actually do have kind of an update for us. There's a news clip that I'm going to watch, and then we're going to read a little news article because announcement. As you know, in the last couple episodes, I can't remember which one, the district attorney of LA, Gascon or whatever his name is, he came out and he said that he's going to be reviewing all of the evidence in this case and particularly looking at is there going to be possibility of resentencing and that kind of thing. We watched the press conference on the channel, so we already went through that. So we knew that this was kind of in the works, that they're, behind the scenes, they're looking at this case. So let me shrink myself and turn this on. Let's watch this brief news clip and then I'm going to read you an article and then we'll get started with part 4 of Erik Menendez's cross-examination. This is going to be the final part of testimony for the defense. They will rest after this, and then we're going to go to closing arguments next week. We'll begin. So, all right, here is this news clip from KTLA 5.
Of Erik and Lyle Menendez will hold a news conference.
That was family members. Sorry, I'd kind of like to put that back.
Relatives of Erik and Lyle Menendez will hold a news conference today in downtown Los Angeles. It'll take place this afternoon as the LA County District Attorney's Office continues to review the murder convictions of the brothers. KTLA's Erik Spillman live in downtown LA with a story for us. Erik, good morning.
Morning, Frank. Back in the mid-1990s, I would not have predicted that now this case would be back in the news. But with the popularity of that Netflix series, Monsters, the story of Erik and Lyle Menendez, that's gotten a lot of attention. The DA is reviewing the case. And then later today at 1 p.m., relatives of Erik and Lyle Menendez will hold a news conference here in front of the
I feel like that's really like lagging. Is it
criminal
lagging or is it
courts
speed?
building to argue that the brothers be released. Now, Erik and Lyle Menendez have been behind bars for nearly 35 years now. They were sentenced to life in prison without parole for murdering their parents, Jose and Kitty Menendez, inside their Beverly Hills mansion back in 1989. Their relatives have always believed that the brothers acted in self-defense after suffering a lifetime of physical, emotional,
What does that mean? I mean, the relatives believe that the boys should not be in prison anymore. They want them to come home. They want them to have a normal life and see, free air and sky and land and be able to not be maltreated for once in their lives and be embraced and loved by their family members, which is what everybody should want and hope for. And unfortunately, we don't all get that.
emotional, and sexual abuse at the hands of their parents. Now, earlier this month, District Attorney George Gascon announced he's taking another look at their conviction. He still hasn't made up his mind on what to do, but one option is that he could ask a judge that the Menendez brothers be resentenced and just set free based on the time that they've already served.
They could just be set free based on the time that they've already served, 35 years. I mean, I have a real problem with um, putting away any minor away for their entire lives. What is what is Erik and Lyle's age right now? I know they were 18 and 21 at the times of the homicides. So what are they now? Let me check their ages. Erik and Lyle age. Erik is 53, Lyle is 56. So think about that. They've spent the majority of their lives already in prison. They're not a threat to society, and I don't believe, I believe that they aren't, in the habit of just going around and taking people's lives. Obviously felt very sorry for what they did. They still miss their parents. They still are like hopelessly sad about what had happened. They were grieving and still loved their parents, as, children tend to do, even if they are mistreated.
One possibility, what is being alleged by his lawyers, not by us, that there was evidence that had that evidence been presented to the jury, the outcome of this case would have been different.
The evidence he's talking about includes a letter written by Erik Menendez months before the murder saying his dad, Jose Menendez, was still molesting him. Quote, "I never know when it's going to happen and it's driving me crazy. Every night I stay up thinking he might come in." There are also new claims by a former member of the boy band Menudo that Jose raped him while Jose was a record executive. Now, the brothers were first tried in 1993. That one ended in hung juries. But at their retrial in 1995, most of the sexual abuse claims were ruled inadmissible. The jury never heard about them. Professor Jessica
Which just boggles my mind. How can you even allow this case to go forward without presenting all of that? You could tell as we've been watching this trial that the judge does not like this line of questioning and gets mad sometimes at the attorneys, especially Leslie Abramson, because she's an outspoken and strong woman, which I find incredible and many people find offensive, which I just don't get. I mean, for a woman to have an opinion, why is that so bad? But anyways, moving on. You know what I mean? Like, And that was one of the points that they had made in the Netflix monster series was that they didn't like Leslie. One of the, I don't know if this is true or not, but one of the jurors who they were like polling afterwards had said to Leslie Abramson, "Well, they didn't like you. It was you that they didn't like." And I find that really troublesome that a strong, opinionated woman who stands up to a judge, why is that so bad? Like, why don't we have more strong women like this? We need to have women who are assertive. If a man did that, so what? Like, they wouldn't think twice. But because she's a woman and being assertive and trying to defend her client aggressively, she's considered, one of those women. I hate that.
Levinson, who's a professor at Loyola Law School, says attitudes have shifted over the years, and that could influence the DA's decision.
I think that decades ago, we saw allegations of sexual abuse, particularly against young men, and maybe we didn't view it as much having much credibility, or particularly not as a motive for murder. Now, I think our understandings have changed. Our understanding of who can be a victim of sexual abuse and what that can lead to has changed.
Levinson also points out that another factor in all this is that the district attorney is facing a tough re-election campaign. He's behind in the polls. Talking about this case, reviewing this conviction, definitely puts his name in the news and may help him win votes. Now, this afternoon, we're expecting to hear from 24 relatives of Erik and Lyle Menendez at the news conference here, as well as one of their celebrity.
So celebrity. As I'm reading or as I'm recording this, this is Wednesday, October 16th, but by the time you watch this, it's going to be October the 17th, and this press conference with family will have already taken place. I will do a separate reaction video of that press conference on my channel for you guys. So if you missed that, be sure to check that out.
Advocates Rosie O'Donnell, she'll be here. Their
Oh,
lawyer
oh yeah, Rosie O'Donnell.
in the news and may help him win votes. Now, this afternoon, we're expecting to hear from 24 relatives of Erik and Lyle Menendez at the news conference here, as well as one of their celebrity advocates, Rosie O'Donnell. She'll be here. Their lawyer, Mark Garagos, he will also speak. They're going to push for the brothers to be released in time for the holidays.
They are pushing for the boys to be released in time for the holidays. This is October. Let's try to get them home before what? Thanksgiving or Christmas is the family's plan. So, sounds like a good plan. What do you guys think? Is this a political move for Gascon or is it, I don't know. It could just be, California is a very liberal state, so perhaps it is to win him some liberal votes. I don't know. It could just be a political move, but in the interest of justice, I'm okay with that if it gets the boys out of prison because, like I said, I don't believe anybody, especially young kids. I know they were adults at the time, but putting them away for life, that's their whole life. They never get to live outside of prison walls. They were in a very bad environment growing up until they were 18 and 21, and now they're in prison. So they've never really had a good life. So let's just be clear. All right, moving on. So the next thing I wanted to do real quick was there's this Vanity Fair article that came out October 14th, and it's titled Sources Tell Vanity Fair the Menendez Brothers May Be Headed for Freedom. Let me make this a little bit bigger for you and me because I'm blind. All right, so Erik and Lyle's extended family are set to be gathering for a press conference at an LA courthouse on Wednesday. They hope DA George Gascon will recommend resentencing. A nice black and white photo of the boys. The campaign to free Erik and Lyle Menendez is gaining momentum. A source close to the case says that a large number of the Menendez brothers' extended family will be in Los Angeles for a press conference at the Clara Shortridge Foltz Criminal Justice Center courthouse this Wednesday. The brothers' aunt, Joan Vandermolen, she testified, we saw her, told Vanity Fair that they were invited by LA County District Attorney George Gaston is what I want to say from Beauty and the Beast. It's like it's spelled like it, but without the T. Gascon. It's unclear if Gascon will attend the press conference himself, but it's the family's hope that they will recommend that the brothers be resentenced after 34, almost 35 years in custody. If the DA were to recommend a revised sentence, a judge would then preside over a hearing. Gascon did not respond to Vanity Fair's request for a comment, but a source with knowledge of the situation believes the DA will make an announcement about resentencing in the next few weeks. So that would be something to look forward to. Erik and Lyle have spent decades in jail without the possibility of parole. They were convicted in 1996 of taking the lives of their parents, Jose and Kitty Menendez, with shotguns in the den of their Beverly Hills home. At their trials, the prosecution said they acted out of greed. The defense argued that the brothers took their parents' lives because Jose had essayed them and that they feared for their lives. The details of the homicides were harrowing, as was the testimony of the essay that the brothers allegedly suffered. Thanks, Vanity Fair, for totally discrediting them in one sentence, making it like it never happened. No, they definitely suffered from that. I don't, there's no way they faked it. Anyways, among those said to be attending the press conference on Wednesday are the brothers' non Agerian aunt. I don't know what that word is. A non-Agerian aunt. What does that? Search that on Google. What does that mean? A person who is between 90 and 99 years old. A non-Agerian aunt. So she's an elderly aunt. Oh, so Joan isn't the one. It was Joan's daughter who we heard from on the stand. I can't remember her first name then. Kathy? Or Diane Vandermolen. It was Diane Vandermolen. That's who we heard on the stand. Sorry. So among those said to be attending the press conference on Wednesday are the brothers' nonagerian aunt, Joan Vandermolen, her children, Diane, Arnie, and Kathy Vandermolen, and her grandson, Erik Vandermolen. I think we heard from Erik on the stand too. Heard from Diane and Erik, I believe. Kitty and Joan's brothers, Milton Anderson and Brian Anderson, are not expected to appear. Unlike much of the family, they have said that they don't believe that Erik and Lyle were aid, Kitty's brothers. But it's very funny, not funny, but it's ironic because the household that they grew up in was full of A, which is how Kitty was made, how she became so, uh, how she was able to maltreat her children so easily. The Menendez case first roared back to life on TikTok during the pandemic when Court TV re-released all of its episodes of the first trial. Public fascination reached new heights in September after the premiere of Ryan Murphy's hit show on Netflix, Monsters, the Erik and Lyle Menendez story, and the case is once again a pop culture phenomenon. This time, Ernest Menendez supporters who believe Erik and Lyle should not have been charged with first-degree homicide are posting on social media and signing petitions, while those who believe the brothers should serve out their sentences are making their cases on TikTok and Instagram comment threads. The story has inspired tabloid of what's with all these big words? Ephemera. What is that word? Take a look. Why are there so many big words?
Ephemera.
Ephemera. things that exist or are used or enjoyed for only a short time. Okay. So the story has inspired tabloid ephemera like t-shirts that can be found on Etsy. One is emblazoned with a photo of the brothers and the words Nightmare on Elm Drive in bright red letters. Their former home is on Elm Drive in Beverly Hills, while another reads Dimes, 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 a reference to a montage in Murphy's show of Lyle frantically trying to make phone calls. Okay. Gascon appears to have solid grounds to recommend that the Menendez brothers be resentenced should he be inclined. Under Penal Code 10172.1, the DA can consider whether someone who was convicted suffered pre conviction psychological trauma or physical aid, if they were given a harsh sentence compared to other cases, and whether or not they could be considered a threat to society. The point of resentencing is to help us undo the crazy things that happened in the 90s, says Menendez attorney Mark Garagos. Erik and Lyle's first trial, during which SA testimony was admitted, resulted in hung juries. Judge Stanley Weisberg wouldn't allow the brothers' attorney Leslie Abramson to present evidence that they were aid in their second trial about the essay. They didn't allow the essay stuff in. So in May of 2023, Garagos and Cliff Gardner, who also represents the Menendez brothers, notified the DA that they believe there is new evidence in the case, most strikingly a letter Erik allegedly wrote to his cousin Andy Cano, who we also heard from on the stand, in which he says he was still being AR'd by his father 8 months before the homicides took place, along with a statement by former Menudo band member Roy Rosello, saying that he was drugged and AR'd by Jose when he was 13 or 14. At a press conference on October 3rd, Gascon said that he hadn't made up his mind yet whether or not the brother's sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole should be reconsidered. We are reviewing the new information, but I think it's also important that we recognize that both men and women can be the victims of SA. When Gascon ran for DA in 2019, he promised to make the justice system more just. He's currently in a re-election race against Nathan Hochman. Voting will take place on November 5th. According to Joan Vandermolen, Erik and Lyle were aware that the press conference is taking place. She says that Erik called his cousin Kathy from prison late last week to urge her to find someone to cover for her at work so she could be present at the courthouse. I wonder if the boys will be there. Vandermolen has been standing by her nephews since their arrest in 1990 and is nervous about what the family will hear from Gascon. What if it's not that they'll be released? She asked this reporter on Saturday. It seems unlikely that the DA would ask a 92-year-old with constant back pain to travel over an hour to Los Angeles only to say that he thinks her nephews should spend the rest of their lives in prison. Hearing this, Joan said, "Thank you," and released a shaky sigh. I really needed to hear that. So, wow, she really wants them to come home, as do other family members, I am sure. So, the editor says this is a developing story, and the original version has been updated to incorporate more new reporting. So, all right. Thank you, Deanna. Nope, that's a contributor. Who is our author? Yeah, Deanna Kizis. Kizis? We'll go with that. All right, so don't use such big words, Deanna. Thanks. All right, well, we like to learn on this channel. All right, sorry for that long intro, but now we can begin our final installment of Erik's cross-examination. So if you haven't already, please hit the like button as it helps the algorithms. And let's go.
The record will reflect that both defendants are in court with all attorneys present as well as prosecution is also present. Witnesses on the witness stand, would you state your your name again for the record, please.
Erik Menendez.
I'll remind you that you're still under oath. You may continue your cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Menendez, yesterday we were talking about the Billionaire Boys Club movie. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And did you, in fact, tell Dr. Oziel that you had seen a BBC movie?
Objection, Your Honor. Asked and answered.
No, I did not.
But you are familiar with the Billionaire Boys Club?
Yes.
And you indicated yesterday that you're familiar with what you called a mini-series.
No, I know there was a miniseries about the actual case. I'm familiar with the case.
How did you know that there was, in fact, a mini-series on the Billionaire Boys Club?
Because Brian Islamania, my friend, I think I even knew about it before him, though. I don't know, it was a big thing when it came out. It was a big television movie.
Now, Brian Islamania is the son of the father who was killed, correct?
Yes.
Now, calling your attention to a conversation that you had on November 29th, 1989, did you refer to forming a group like the BBC?
No, I didn't refer to it like that.
Did you refer to forming a group of 4 people, as you put it? The person you were talking to, a person named Brian, John, and Dave.
I'm going to object to this calling for hearsay.
Objection sustained. This will be evidence offered at a later time.
With regard to the session that you had with Dr. Oziel on October 31st, did you tell Dr. Oziel, after talking about this movie on the BBC,
I don't understand why the closed captions can only refer to Dr. Oziel as Dr. Oil, but that is what they call him. So, there you go.
did you tell him that there was no way to link you and your brother to the crime?
No, I did not. I said just the opposite.
You said what?
I told him about the guns down in San Diego. We had a long conversation about that.
And you told him that you could be easily linked to the crime because someone would know that you used Donovan Gaudreau's license in San Diego. Is that what you told him?
No, that's not exactly what I told him.
What did you say?
I told him about the gun purchase in San Diego and how Donovan had called the police the next day and how Detective Zoller told me about, I told Lyle about Donovan on the 17th, I'm quite sure, and how it was purchased with Donovan's license. And I also told him about the video cameras, and I was asking him how long tapes stay in video cameras and so on.
And did you, in fact, call down to the Big Five in San Diego to find out about that?
No, I did not.
Now, so it's your belief, right after the killings, that you would be caught?
Oh, I definitely believe that.
So you never told Dr. Oziel that there was no way to link you to the crime since the fingerprints in the house were your fingerprints, since you lived there, and there were no witnesses. Did you ever tell him either of those?
I told him that I didn't think there was any other way to link me other than the guns.
And did you in fact tell him that the guns had not been recovered because you hid them down a hillside off of Mulholland Drive?
Yes.
So you told him that the guns had not been recovered, correct?
Yes.
And you told him that you believed there was no way to tie you and your brother into buying the weapons in the San Diego gun store, correct?
No, I told him just the opposite. There was an easy way, and that's what we discussed. And that's what I was concerned about.
The police, are you saying to these juries that the police would run everyone that you or your brother ever knew in your life to determine if they had bought the shotguns?
No, what I discussed with Dr. Oziel is that I figured that chain stores or something to do with gun records were held on computers, and that all the police would have to do is, and I knew at the time they suspected us highly, that all they'd have to do was run names in the computers and find out when guns were purchased on what days. I was concerned about that.
But they didn't know at that time that you had used fake ID, did they?
Objection.
Rephrase the question, please.
Is it your state of mind that the police knew that you used fake ID in San Diego to purchase these shotguns, sir?
No, I really didn't think that because I bought them in San Diego, it really mattered. I thought there was a statewide computer. Actually, I thought there was a national computer. But once I found out they knew about Donovan, that's when I got concerned, because I thought all they'd have to do was punch in the name in the computer.
You have a knowledge about computers, it appears, sir. Is that right?
Actually, I was wrong. They don't have a statewide computer.
But that was your state of mind before this occurred. That went to your state of mind when you spoke to Dr. Oziel.
Yes.
So you thought about computers, and you thought about a statewide computer. Mm-hmm. You thought that they could punch in certain information into the computer?
Certainly.
So when you testified that you didn't know anything about computers, was that inaccurate?
No, I really don't know anything about computers.
Had you ever had any interest in computers?
My dad brought home a computer when I was like 13 or 14, and I had an interest in it then, because you could play the video games on it.
So you had worked on computers before?
No, not really. I hadn't done any assignments on them. I just fiddled around with it, though.
You turned the computer on and you accessed information?
Yes.
You knew something about computers?
No, not really. I didn't know much. I didn't know the computer that he brought home was one of those old-style computers, not like the computers nowadays that are apparently real easy to access. It's real complicated, and I screwed up on it.
So when Dr. Oziel testified that you had told him that there was no way to link you to the guns that you and your brother purchased in the San Diego gun store, he made that up? Because you actually told him that they're going to find out because they know that I used fake ID in San Diego.
No, I didn't tell him that, but we had a discussion about Donovan and the video cameras.
You actually mentioned this person's name in the video cameras to Dr. Oziel?
Yes, we had a long discussion about it.
And you told him that you would get caught because they would run something on a computer?
No, I told him that that was the only way. I thought we might get caught at that point.
So you told him that was the only flaw to your plan?
No. I told him that that was the only evidence the police would probably have at that point, since no witnesses have come forward and no one linked us in any way, and so that was the only way I thought at that point they could find us.
Now, you just used some interesting language. You just used the language that Dr. Oziel said you had used, that no one could link you in any way.
Objection sustained. Why don't you rephrase the question, please?
You had just stated, sir, that you believe no one can link you in any way other than that, correct?
Yes.
And that's what Dr. Oziel testified that you said, didn't he?
Objection argumentative.
Overruled.
That's what I just said, and that's the conversation we had with Dr. Oziel about how we could be linked to this, and that's when we talked about, actually, we talked about what the police knew, and that's when we talked about the guns.
Now, you told Dr. Oziel at that time that the police had not recovered the guns because you hid the guns, correct?
Yes.
And that you did inform Dr. Oziel that you bought the guns in San Diego using false identification, correct?
Not in that language, but yes.
At that point, did Dr. Oziel indicate to you that he wanted to have your brother come in on session?
Yes.
That's after you had told him what led up to the murders, what you did in breaking in or bursting into the room, shooting your parents, and what you did afterwards with respect to the evidence?
No.
Objection compound.
Overruled.
No.
What did you tell Dr. Oziel before Dr. Oziel said, let's call Lyle and tell him to come into the session?
I talked.
Objection asked and answered.
Sustained.
At some point, were you present when Dr. Oziel called your brother
Yes, I was.
and asked him to come into the office,
Yeah, he called him on his phone.
and your brother came in?
Yes.
Now, you said that it took your brother a while to get to the office, correct?
Yeah, longer than I thought it would.
And during that period of time, there was more discussion about what had happened?
It was more discussion about what my parents were like.
When your brother arrived at the office, he wanted to find out what you had told Dr. Oziel, correct?
No, just the opposite.
He did not want to know anything.
Overruled.
Dr. Oziel wanted to tell him, and Lyle said, "No, I don't want to know. I don't want to hear about it."
At some point, he learned that you had told Dr. Oziel what you and your brother had done, correct?
Yeah, he wanted to hear it from me. I did not want to discuss it with Dr. Oziel.
You found out at some point, sir, that you had implicated him in the killings of your parents.
Yes. I
And
think he suspected it as soon as he went into the session, though.
something was told to him in your presence in that regard, is that right?
Dr. Oziel said, I think on the phone, Erik's told me what happened or something like that.
So he knew coming in what Dr. Oziel meant.
Objection, Your Honor, counsel speculate.
Sustained.
Was it your state of mind that your brother already knew by the time he arrived at the office?
Objection, Your Honor, irrelevant and based on speculation.
Overruled.
No, I thought that from what I heard on Dr. Oziel's end, that Lyle was probably pretty nervous about it, and I was right.
And when he came in, did he appear to be nervous?
Yes.
And did he immediately become menacing?
No, not immediately.
Okay, how long did it take?
He got angry. I don't use the word menacing. I'm not quite sure of the exact definition, but he just got angry and defensive with Dr. Oziel. And was saying that he didn't want to be there. He didn't want to know what I told him, and he just wanted to talk to me.
Did he get into a fight with you and yell at you for telling Dr. Oziel what you and he had done?
In front of Dr. Oziel?
Yes.
I don't know. He raised his voice once or twice. I know that.
Directed at you?
Yeah, basically saying that, why I couldn't tell him and why I had to go to Dr. Oziel.
Now, at that point, had you told your brother that you had told anyone else about you and he killing your parents?
No, I hadn't.
So this was the first time that your brother was aware that you had exposed the two of you as killers?
Yes.
And you had discussed earlier that it would be less of a risk if the two of you actually committed the killings yourselves, correct?
No.
You had discussed, you had not discussed that at all?
Objection, I asked and answered yesterday.
Overruled.
I don't understand what you're saying. You discussed that it would be less of a risk if Lyle and I did it ourselves?
Yes, that no one else would know, just the two of you, and you would not have to rely on anybody else.
No, that was never discussed.
Now, it was your brother's belief, though, at that point, that only you and he knew that you and he had killed your parents.
Objection calls for speculation.
Overruled.
Yes, I believe that was his belief.
And now he understood that Dr. Oziel knew what the two of you had done.
Yes.
And he was angry.
Yes.
He was angry that you had told Dr. Oziel what you had done,
Yes.
and he was angry with Dr. Oziel.
Yes.
Did your brother state at that time that it wasn't a perfect murder anymore, that you caused him a very big problem, and that the doctor now knew what you and he had done?
No.
He never made any comment like that.
Definitely never made any comment
In
like
fact-
that. My brother doesn't talk like that.
Maybe you can share with these juries how your brother reacted.
He reacted in saying, I don't want to be here. I don't want to know what you know. I just want to talk to my brother. Dr. Oziel said, well, we can talk about it. And Lyle said, I don't want to be here. And he just wanted to get out of there.
Okay. You have testified that your brother was angry, that he was yelling at you, he was angry with Dr. Oziel. Did he make any statements regarding his displeasure with you about telling Dr. Oziel?
Yes. I think he may have used the word he felt betrayed or something to that extent. He felt like I should have told him instead of Dr. Oziel if I was having...
When he said that he felt betrayed, did he point out to you that now it's not the perfect murder, now somebody else knows? Now it's not just you and I. It's now Dr. Oziel as well.
No.
Did your brother in your presence tell Dr. Oziel that he didn't want anyone looking over his shoulder and controlling him, and that's why he murdered his parents to begin with?
No.
Did your brother in your presence tell Dr. Oziel that he was very unhappy, that he'd have to think about what he was going to do with this situation, about Dr. Oziel knowing what you and your brother had done?
I don't remember.
You don't remember?
I don't remember.
Could he have said something like that?
Objection calls for speculation.
Could you read it again?
Yes.
How is it
Did your brother in your presence state that he didn't want anyone looking over his shoulder and controlling him, and that's why he murdered his parents to begin with? And this made him very unhappy that someone else knew about it.
Objection content.
Overruled.
No.
Morgan?
That wasn't...
Not reread the same question to me.
That's true. We did not.
In
question, please.
In summary. Do you remember him making any statements regarding your father controlling him, and that's why he murdered him?
Asked and answered.
Overruled.
No, Lyle was certainly not talking to Dr. Oziel about reasons why he didn't even want to... He didn't even admit to Dr. Oziel that he killed our parents. He said he didn't want to talk about it, and he didn't want to be there.
Was it clear from your brother's reaction, getting mad at you for telling Dr. Oziel, that he in fact was involved in the killing of your parents?
Objection calls for speculation.
Sustained.
Did he in fact express his anger in Dr. Oziel's presence with you for having told what you and he had done?
Asked and answered.
Sustained.
Did Dr. Oziel in your presence state that he felt that your brother was menacing?
He may have. I don't remember.
There's some things you don't remember that you told to Dr. Oziel that day, I take it.
I'm sure there's a lot of things I don't remember. I just remember what I remember.
So some of these things that, for example, the BBC movie, you may have said.
Well, there's certain things I know I wouldn't have said, but I can't say that I definitely didn't because I don't remember, but I'm sure that I would not have said it.
At some point, did you get the feeling that your brother wanted to get rid of Dr. Oziel?
Did he say that to me?
No, at some point, did you feel that your brother wanted to get rid of Dr. Oziel?
Objection.
Overruled.
No.
At some point, did you run out of the office?
Yes,
Why?
because of two reasons. One, Lyle's reaction, and I couldn't stand it anymore. I was now feeling even more guilty. I was now feeling guilty about the fact that I thought I had displeased my brother and betrayed him, and I now thought the whole world was a mess and things were just getting worse by the second. I just ran out. I couldn't take it anymore.
So you had discussed with Dr. Oziel what you and he had done with respect to killing your parents, and when he came in and he was angry with you, you realized that, as I think you testified, you had screwed up, correct?
I'm sorry. You said too many things in there.
Okay. After telling you told Dr. Oziel what you and your brother had done with respect to killing your parents, correct?
I told him that we had killed our parents.
And you gave him details of that, correct?
Your
As
Honor,
you've
ask the
indicated.
answer.
Sustained.
You also have testified that your brother came in and was angry with you for having disclosed what you and he had done to your parents.
Objection
Correct?
cumulative.
He didn't know. He didn't know exactly what I disclosed to Dr. Oziel. No one told him.
He knew that you had implicated him in the murders.
Objection, Your Honor, calls for speculation.
Sustained. Sustained.
What is it that you knew at that point?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to this. We can hold it.
Objection sustained. It's already been asked. Mr. Briano, go on something else, please.
Finally.
At some point, you left the room.
Yes, I did.
And you left the room because your brother was angry at you.
Objection, ask the answer.
Overruled.
I left the room for a multitude of reasons, just all sorts of guilty feelings, so I just ran out.
Was one of those guilty feelings the fact that now your brother knew that you had disclosed what you and he had done?
Objection, Your Honor, ask the answer.
Overruled.
Yes.
And where did you go after that?
I ran downstairs to the car.
And was your new Jeep sitting down at the street?
Yes, it was.
And did your brother come down shortly thereafter?
Yes, he did.
And did you have a conversation with your brother at the Jeep?
With Dr. Zeal and Lyle. They both came down together. And yes, we did at that point.
And at that point, did you tell Dr. Oziel that you would be back, or did you call him the next day?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear it.
At that point, at your Jeep, did you discuss with Dr. Oziel another session, or did you call him later?
No, we discussed coming back. I don't remember if we made the exact time, but we discussed coming back on the Thursday.
Now, you have testified in direct examination that you felt that you better go back because Dr. Oziel might go to the police.
That's what Lyle and I discussed later.
So was it sometime later that you made the decision to go back to talk to Dr. Oziel more?
No, we had made the plans with Dr. Zeal. We discussed later whether or not we were going to cancel them or whether or not we were going to keep those plans.
And you decided it was a good idea to keep the plans because he now had information that he could turn over to the police, you thought?
Well, he definitely had information that he could turn over to the police.
And you didn't want that to happen?
No.
Now, on November 2nd, you and your brother both went in to see Dr. Oziel, is that correct?
Yes, we did.
And on that day, was there a discussion about why you had killed your parents?
No, there wasn't.
At any time during that entire session on November 2nd, did you and your brother ever discuss the killing of your parents?
Yeah, Dr. Zeal kept bringing it up. And he would either, I don't think he directly came out and asked why, but he certainly was telling us the reasons. I mean, part of the session was based on that point, him telling us what we knew of the family, and we discussing what we knew of the family, and then him telling us how that fit into why. But the basic, I would say, premise of the conversation was Dr. Oziel telling me that I didn't know why.
Mr. Menendez, are you telling these jurors that you and your brother went into that session and you simply sat back passively and said, why don't you guess why we did this?
No, we actually Lyle told him up front that he did not want to discuss why, and that's not why he was there. And so we all decided that we would talk about what he called I think he called it the constellation of our family and how it was put together and what the elements were in it.
Early on in the conversation, did Dr. Oziel inform you and your brother that he had taped the session and that he had instructed his attorney that upon his demise that the attorney would go to the police and that this tape was in a safety deposit box?
That's if I remember correctly, that's the first thing he said, which put us back a little. And that's the first thing he said, that he had these tapes in safety deposit boxes.
And did he inform you at that time, you and your brother, that that was for his protection?
Yes.
that he felt threatened by you?
Yes.
At that point, isn't it true that your brother proceeded to laugh and he told Dr. Oziel that he should have felt threatened because after the session, he and you had sat in your Jeep and the first statement that he made to you was, well, now how do we kill Oziel?
Definitely not.
Your brother was angry that day, was he? Was he not on October
Which day are you talking about?
October 31st, 1989? He was angry that day, wasn't he?
Yes, he was.
And he was angry because somebody else knew what you and he had done.
That's part of it, but he was more angry at the break of loyalty. And I'm not sure if it was just pure anger. I think he was quite hurt.
He was angry at you for disclosing and also angry that there was someone else that knew. Would that be fair to say?
That would be fair to say that was part of what was happening. I think that another large part was that he felt a serious break in loyalty that I would go to someone else, and he felt hurt about that. He liked how close our relationship was.
So there are two reasons.
Two reasons that I knew about.
Okay. One being that he was angry that there was a third party that knew.
Objection, Your Honor. Ask and answer.
Sustain.
Did he explain to Dr. Oziel that you and he had discussed killing Dr. Oziel?
Did he explain that?
Yes.
No.
After Dr. Oziel had explained to you and your brother that he had this tape in a safety deposit box, this insurance policy, was it
Form question.
Sustain.
after Dr. Oziel told you and your brother that he had this tape, that he had it in a safety deposit box, did your brother joke with him about then having to protect Dr. Oziel so that nothing would happen to him and the tapes being released?
I recognize that. I don't know where it was brought up. I don't have a recollection of it being brought up right after that, but I recognize that statement.
Did your brother tell Dr. Oziel that he had decided that it wouldn't look too good if Dr. Oziel disappeared too soon because it would have been too close to when your parents had been killed?
No, you're missing the whole point of what I'm saying. Dr. Oziel was telling us that he felt threatened, and because of it, he could go to the police right then if he wanted to. And we were trying to tell him no reason to feel threatened. Nothing's gonna happen. And Lyle wouldn't have said something like that.
When you were joking around, after he had told you about this tape, that's when the joking occurred about, well, it wouldn't look too good if you disappeared too soon. Isn't that correct?
After he had told us about the tape, we were certainly not in a joking mood.
Mr. Menendez, you said that from the very beginning you thought that you were going to get caught. Isn't that right?
Ask and answer.
Sustain.
Mr. Menendez, do you recall stating on November 29th, 1989, that I've known from the beginning, no clues, no one heard anything?
Sustain.
This is a statement that you made, sir.
Your Honor, same objection.
All right, sustained at this time. Go on to something else, please.
Very well. Mr. Menendez, were you present when Dr. Oziel had the conversation with your brother, and wherein Dr. Oziel said, I don't want to live in fear?
Objection, Your Honor. Biggest time. And place.
Overruled.
No, I don't remember that.
On November 2nd, 1989, in that session that you had with your brother, with Dr. Oziel?
Dr. Oziel said he didn't want to live in fear?
Yes.
I don't remember it.
Dr. Oziel had expressed that he was afraid, correct?
He said that he was afraid on the 31st. I guess he still said that he was afraid, yeah.
And that when Dr. Oziel said, I don't want to live in fear, your brother said, neither did my father. You remember that?
No.
At that point, was there a discussion about why you had wanted to kill your father?
At some point in the conversation, my father's personality was deeply discussed.
And you expressed those things that you didn't like about your father? That'd be fair to say?
No, that wouldn't be fair to say.
You're telling what a good guy your father was.
No, I was telling Dr. Oziel at the same time that I wanted to write a book about all the great things that my father had been. And I was also telling him some of the other things. He was telling me some of the things. It was sort of like a group conversation about what he knew about my dad and about how we wanted to write a book and some of the things that we knew about our dad.
Do you think there's still that dynamic of we love and respect him and still hold him to this high regard, even though he did these horrible things to us, we still think he's this great guy? It's such a weird dynamic going on in their brains when you're in this situation and you have someone who maltreats you. It can really mess with your brain like that, and especially when it's someone you're a parent, someone close to you like that. I can't even imagine what that's like to feel love for them and also hate for the things that they have done to you.
When he wanted to know from you, why did you kill your mother? What did you tell him?
Objection to back in the room.
Overall.
I didn't tell him. I remember specifically that Lyle said that he was not going to discuss that.
Are you saying that when Dr. Oziel asked about why you killed your mother, your brother said, no, we're not going to discuss motivation here?
I believe Dr. Oziel testified to that.
I believe Dr. Oziel testified that you and your brother had discussed why you killed your mother.
Objection.
Isn't that correct?
Argumentative.
Objection sustained. Rephrase the question.
Yes, Your Honor. Isn't it true that Dr. Oziel testified here as to what you and your brother told him with regard to why you killed your mother as well?
Yes, he said some things along that line as well.
And he said he had testified that the plot began with the viewing of this BBC special, correct?
Objection to what Dr. is testified to, Your Honor, is irrelevant.
Overall.
Yes, Dr. Oziel testified to that here.
And that the father in that BBC special mirrored what you and your brother wanted to do to your father. Isn't that correct?
That misstates the testimony.
Overall.
Yeah, he said something along those lines as well.
Now, you have indicated that you were a friend of Brian Islamania.
Yes.
And in this movie...
All right, let's go on to something else.
This is reserved for
Let's just
later.
go on to something else.
That's a weird reaction, isn't it? Is he getting annoyed that we're just beating a dead horse here, or what? Why did he actually stop him in the middle of that questioning? There wasn't even an objection. So I'm confused, but okay, moving on.
You had indicated that your mother was depressed and suicidal. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was talked about.
You expressed that she would potentially be a witness against you.
No, I'm not sure what context you're talking about.
Well, if you had killed your father and your mother would have lived, would she have been a witness against you?
Your Honor, I object to this confusion. You're talking about what was said, Dr. Oziel.
Why don't you rephrase the question?
And you're talking about things that we'll never know because it didn't happen that way. So again, it's speculation and inference. They're making so many inferences here. If you listen to his questions, it's like he's inferring something because of something else. Like he's jumping to conclusions. He's looking at the evidence and jumping to a different conclusion. And it's just and then making his questions in that regard as to if almost like stuff that's imagined or like in this case it's a what if, a hypothetical. How can you answer a hypothetical when it didn't happen? Stupid line of questioning.
Please.
Was your state of mind at the time
Which
that at the time of the killings that if your mother had lived, she could have been a witness against you?
Objection, Your Honor, calls for speculation.
overall.
No, I doubt she would have been a witness against us at any point. I think that she might very well have killed us and killed herself, just poisoned everyone, but I doubt very much that she would come to court and testify against us. That wouldn't have happened.
That's your state of mind.
That's more than my state of mind. That's my absolute belief.
That's what he knows of his parents. She was so adamant that they had to have a good appearance that she would go to those lengths if it came to that, is their belief.
You wanted to kill your mother just as badly as you wanted to kill your father?
I hadn't thought about the difference. I only thought that they were going to kill us, and at that last moment, to kill them.
Did you ever tell Dr. Oziel that as it got closer to the time when you would kill your parents, that there were second thoughts about killing your mother?
No, we didn't discuss it. We didn't discuss that. Let me try to remember exactly. I know we didn't discuss that. I don't remember certain things.
Do you remember?
It's not like they were plotting. They never had a discussion. That's what he's trying to get at, I think. And they never had a discussion about this is how we're going to do it. This is how we're going to take our parents out. And should we take mom out too? Should we take dad out first? How should we do it? Blah, blah, blah. They never had that conversation because there was never any intent to purposely take their lives. So when he's like, do you remember this? Did you say that? Did you ever talk about this? No, because we didn't plan it. And then he's asking all these questions, like I said, inference, like they're inferring that these boys planned it all out ahead of time. And that's not what the evidence is showing us.
Remember telling Dr. Oziel that once you had made the plan and had formed it with your brother.
We're not going to object to this nasty approach.
All right.
Mr. Menendez, with respect to the October 31st, 1989 session, did you tell Dr. Oziel that you remembered that your mother locked the doors to the bedroom? I'll rephrase that, Your Honor. On the November 2nd, 1989 session, or in that session, did you tell Dr. Oziel that your mother had locked the doors to the bedroom and that your mother and father had sensed that that you were capable of murdering them?
No. I said something like that, but I didn't say that.
Now, on that same November 2nd session, in the context of talking about how impossible your father was, did you tell Dr. Oziel that your father had nearly disinherited you?
No.
And that was another example of why you had to kill your father?
No, I wouldn't have used the word disinherit since he didn't nearly disinherit me. He did. But we did talk about what my dad was like and the things that he would do over my lifetime.
In fact, sir, he did not disinherit you, did he?
Apparently not.
In fact, the will that was found gave his estate to you and your brother.
Yes.
Had he discussed disinheritance with you before?
Dr. Oziel or
No,
my
your father.
We didn't discuss it. He told me. My dad rarely discussed things with me.
Did he ever say, if you don't shape up, I'm going to disinherit you?
No, he didn't use disinheriting me as a threat hanging over my head. I either was or I wasn't.
It was, I believe you stated September of 1988 that your father had the discussion about disinheriting you?
Yes, he told me I was out of the will.
Now, with regard to the will, you had discussed that your father had brought a computer home when you were about 14 or 15 years old?
I really don't remember the date. I was 13, 14, not 15. It may have been.
Do you remember?
I would object to this examination because the direct administration before the jury.
I don't know exactly where it's going yet, so objection overruled as to that question.
With respect to this will and your knowledge, strike that. With respect to the computer that your father brought home and your knowledge about computers, do you know if the computer your father brought home was an IBM or an Apple? Do you know what type of computer it was?
I don't remember. I know it was a big, bulky, big thing that even had a telephone thing attached to it, which is what I like to play with.
And in fact, you actually operated this computer.
I actually, by accident, erased the hard disk and was banned from using the computer at that point. But I used to like to play the video games on it.
Did your parents give you lessons on how to operate a computer after that, so you wouldn't do that again?
No. Before that, they had a big manual, a DOS manual and a basic manual, just boxes of manuals how to use this computer, but I never read those, which is why I made that mistake.
Never opened one of those up?
I don't remember opening. I was so young, I didn't want to read all this material. I just wanted to play around with it.
And you say there was a phone on this computer?
Yeah, it was a...
What does any of this have to do with anything? Why are we learning all these details about him, whether or not he read these books or if there was a phone on the computer? Is this necessary? This is like the worst line of questioning.
It was you could call people through this computer. I remember that, and I was always trying to access those things, and I could never figure it out.
Was there more than one computer at the Beverly Hills mansion when your parents were killed?
Yes, I believe there were two.
One was upstairs in the bedroom?
One was my mother's, and one was, I think it was in the study.
And whose was that?
It was a computer that was used for homework assignments and things like that.
By whom?
By my mother, and by, I guess, I used it once to type up a paper once I learned how to type in school.
Did you ever see your brother operate that computer?
No, I didn't. He wasn't a computer person.
Now, you're talking about this phone on the computer. Was that computer then wasn't at your house when you killed your parents? The one that you were talking about that your father brought home in your early teens?
I really, I don't know. I don't remember.
Did you ever see a computer in your brother's guest house?
No.
And you had indicated that there was a phone in your brother's guest house, correct?
Yes.
Was that a stationary phone, or was it one of those mobile-type phones that you could pick up and take with you if you had to go to the bathroom or something like that?
You mean, was it a portable?
Yes.
Or did it have a long cord?
Right.
I don't know. I don't know.
Do you remember ever using the phone in the guest house?
No, I don't.
You have testified that you believed that you were a suspect in September of 1989, correct?
Yes.
And that you went to talk to Dr. Oziel on October 31st?
Yes.
About a week before you went to talk to Dr. Oziel, that is on October 24th, did you have a conversation with Detective Zoller?
Yeah, at my house.
And did Detective Zoller indicate to you that there was going to be an LA Times article about the participation, perhaps, of your brother in the killings?
Yes.
Did that concern you?
Certainly.
And did you take steps in that regard?
I remember trying to locate my brother. I don't remember if I ever did.
So this occurred about a week before you actually went to see Dr. Oziel?
I don't remember it occurring a week before, but if it was on the 24th and I went to see Oziel on the 31st, then it would be a week.
Did that have an effect on you, your state of mind?
In terms of me thinking that the police had me as a suspect,
right.
I had known that since September.
But did that heighten your concern about that?
No, actually it didn't. It was surprising to me that if the police suspected me, they were telling me that someone else suspected me. It was a little confusing, but I still suspected that the police thought I was involved.
Now, you had a relationship with Dr. Oziel prior to seeing him on October 31st and November 2nd?
Objection.
Overall.
Yes.
Correct. And, in fact, you had an appointment with him on August 18th, 1989, correct?
Yes, I did.
And that was the day that you and your brother went down to San Diego to buy the shotguns?
Yeah, I had canceled that appointment earlier in the week.
Okay.
I had made it and then canceled it.
When is it your recollection that you canceled that?
I know it was after I spoke to my brother because I had made it before I spoke to my brother.
What day would that have been on?
I made it after the conversation with my father on Sunday when he told me that I was going to be having to sleep at home some days, and I just wanted to die, and so I called Dr. Oziel to make an appointment because I hadn't seen him in a long time. And then after I talked to Lyle and told him everything, there was no need to go to Dr. Oziel, so I canceled it.
Dr. Oziel was a friend of yours at that point, correct?
Objection, Your
Overall.
No, not really.
Not really?
No, he was a therapist who...
Why'd you consider your therapist your friend? Especially when they're still charging you to come to your parents' funeral.
He was a therapist.
And if you were having any problems at that time, you would have gone to see him on August 18th?
Not really. I know that he's...
I'm going to object to the questions in this area.
Overall.
I know that he spoke with my parents, and so I never really told him much about...
I'd like to be heard.
All right, you may.
Thank you.
Mr. Menendez, take you back to the night of the killings. You had testified that you and your brother had gone to the Century 14, and I believe we didn't get beyond that. So after the Century 14 theater, where did you next go?
Up to Mulholland Drive or Mulholland Highway.
Were you directing your brother where to go at this point?
At that point, yes.
You were familiar with the area?
Yes, I was.
Where exactly did you direct your brother to stop that night?
On Mulholland Highway.
Where, though?
Oh, I don't know. Within 1 to 2 miles of cold water. It was dark. He just pulled over at the side of the road.
Was it pitch black outside? You could barely see anything?
I know that it was like late at night. I don't remember what kind of moon was out that night.
It's your recollection that you went about 2 miles and then you told your brother to stop. This looks like a good place to dump the guns.
No, I don't know if I told him. I don't remember telling him where to dump the guns. I remember directing him how to get to Mulholland Drive or Highway, but I don't really remember how far down we went, or me telling him where to stop.
Was there some discussion, though, in the car as to your knowledge of the area and where you would end up throwing the shotguns?
Yeah, I kept saying we needed to get rid of the guns, and or something to that extent, and I didn't know where, so I just said drive up to Mulholland.
Okay, and at some point, I believe after 2 miles, was it, that you said, okay, stop here?
No, I didn't tell him how far down Mulholland, and I don't know exactly how far down we went, but I don't remember telling him where to stop.
Do you remember houses being around where you took the guns down this hill?
No.
Do you remember any lights from any buildings around there?
No, I remember a lot of forest.
When you went down the hill, was it dirt or was it bush or what?
It was dirt, bush, trees, all kinds of things.
And how far did you take the guns down?
It didn't seem that far to me. I don't know, 50 feet? Maybe 75. I don't know. I ran down so quickly and ran back up.
Did you tell Dr. Oziel that you went down about 150 feet?
I didn't tell him how far I went down.
You just told him that you went down a hill?
Yeah.
To your knowledge, your brother never tried to get the guns?
I don't know what Lyle tried to do, but I know we discussed it with Dr. Oziel.
And when you discussed it with Dr. Oziel, was there then an attempt to get the guns?
No.
And after you went down the side of this hill, and I believe you said you put some bushes or some branches over the guns?
I don't really remember whatever was around. I just tried it with like 2 sweeps. I didn't cover the guns completely.
And then you ran up the hill?
Yes.
Got into your car?
Yes.
And your brother was driving?
Yes.
Was he facing the same direction as when you were going?
I don't remember. I don't remember.
And where'd you go after that?
Well, we wanted to try to get over to Perry and at the Taste of LA. So I was telling him, Lyle was unfamiliar with the area, much less familiar than I was. So I was telling him how to get to Taste of LA.
Was he kind of driving erratically at that point?
He was driving fast, and I was telling him to slow down because I was afraid that we'd get pulled over and arrested, and had all this stuff in the car, and that we were going to get arrested right then.
You had testified on direct that you had to, at one point, tell your brother to get it together.
Yes.
And as you're coming down this hill, did you tell him how to get to the Santa Monica Civic Center?
I mean, when I was coming down Mulholland?
Yes.
Yeah, I was giving him directions.
And you knew how to get to Santa Monica from that point?
Yes.
And was it your understanding that the Santa Monica Civic Center was on, what, 3rd Street, between 3rd and 4th Street in Santa Monica?
There's Lincoln, 3rd, 4th. You can take any of them, I believe.
And on the way to the Santa Monica Civic, did you stop anywhere?
We may very well have stopped at the gas station on the way there. I don't have a specific memory of doing that before, but that very well may have happened.
Where did you tell him? Which route did you tell him to take?
The freeway.
From Mulholland to where?
Mulholland to... It was one of the streets that went to the 405. It was either Santa Monica or Sunset. I don't remember which one.
And then on to the 405.
Yeah, the 405 just cuts into the 10, which just brings you right into Santa Monica.
And where was it that you stopped at this gas station, sir?
in Santa Monica.
Was it very close to the Santa Monica Civic?
The Santa Monica Civic, we got lost just, we took a wrong street somewhere right in Santa Monica, getting to the Civic Center, because I wasn't exactly sure on what street that place was, but I know the gas station was real close to it.
Close to where the Taste of LA was?
Yeah, I believe so. I believe it was right off the freeway, the gas station.
And was the gas station open?
I think so.
Okay, and did you go to the back of this gas station?
Far to the side. I have a memory of some sort of a car wash there. I could be wrong, but it was far away from the gas station. There was a dumpster.
And at that point, you removed your pants?
Yes.
And did you see your brother remove anything?
I have a specific memory of his shoes. I don't remember if he took anything else off.
At that point, did he ask you, do you have some shoes I could wear? I have blood on mine.
I don't remember. I lived halfway in my car, so if he did, I would have given him some.
And you had plenty of clothes to put on that day?
Yes.
And you pulled out another pair of pants?
Yes.
Put those on?
Yes.
And then you went to the Santa Monica Civic Auditorium?
Yes.
And you went inside of the building?
No, I didn't go in at first. It wasn't a building. It was a fenced area of, I'm not even quite sure what exactly it was, but it was called the Taste of LA. I went in after Lyle didn't come out for a while. Lyle didn't want me to go in.
Was there a reason for that?
Yeah, my demeanor wasn't doing so well. He wanted me to just stay in the car and relax there when he went to go find Perry.
And he went around and looked for Perry on the grounds?
I assume. I don't know. I wasn't with him.
Were you with him when he made a phone call to Perry?
No, I wasn't.
Did your brother tell you that he told Perry that you and he were there since 10:15, and he told Perry that?
I don't know what he told Perry. The one thing I remember is him saying that we were supposed to meet Perry at the Cheesecake Factory.
And did he tell you what the purpose of that was?
Yeah, he wanted to be with someone that night. I assume to try to further an alibi, we hadn't met anyone that night, so I assume that was the reason.
Mr. Menendez, you say that you had been molested for 12 years, correct? That's your testimony?
Yes, that's what happened.
All the way up to when you were nearly 19 years old?
Up until my father died.
Now, are there any witnesses to this molestation?
Objection, on cause for speculation.
Overall.
Was anyone in the room?
Yes.
No.
In fact, the only person that could deny or contest your claim is your father, correct?
Objection, on cause for speculation.
Overall.
My father and my mother.
And both of them are dead, correct?
Yes.
At this point, Your Honor, with respect to that
All right,
one
let me
issue.
see counsel then at the sidebar regarding the schedule.
Oh, yeah, that stopped. I forgot. So here it goes on to the next section. Wait, that's not what he was wearing, was it? No.
I'm a Holland Highway.
So this
Where,
is-
though?
Oh, I don't know. Within.
He was wearing blue here. So this is a new day.
You may continue your cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Menendez, I believe you indicated that on July 31st, 1989, you were in Tampa, Florida?
Yes, I believe so.
And was that at the Harry Hopman Saddlebrook International Tennis Club?
I believe that was the name, yes.
Okay, and you were attending some kind of a school there?
I went there to play tennis, to train for Kalamazoo, and to visit my Aunt Martha.
And when you were there, do you recall during that period of time that your brother was also there?
He may have been there that time, may have been the time before. I really don't have a great recollection, but it could have been that time.
Now, would you describe for the juries what the setup was like at this camp? Did you have your own room?
Yes. Every you shared rooms. You had roommates, and then there was the professional tennis side where a lot of the professional tennis players played, and then there was the camp side where a lot of the juveniles played, and I played on both sides.
Do you remember staying in Complex 4?
I don't remember
The arrangements were set up that you would have roommates?
Yeah, the first time I went there, I had 2 roommates or 1 roommate. I don't remember how many roommates. And then whatever time Lyle was there, I don't remember. Lyle and I stayed by ourselves, and there was a kid named Toby that used to hang out with us.
Okay. So you would stay in the same room as your brother?
Yes, well, there were separate rooms, but the same apartment.
Did each room have its own television set?
I have no idea.
Do you remember watching television while you were there?
No, I don't. I remember watching TV on a video camera that we had over there. We would tape tennis and watch it, and so on.
So there was a television set
Yes.
available? You don't recall whether it was in your individual room?
I don't know.
Was there a television set for the complex? That is some kind of a room that was shared by all of the people that had rooms within that complex?
What? Does any of this matter? Did you have a TV in your room, sir, or was it in the adjoining room, or was it in your brother's room? Do you remember, sir, where the TV was located? What does it matter? Who cares? Does this have anything to do with anything? Please get there, sir.
Complex.
There was a television set, I believe, in every apartment. It was a country club, and I guess the name was Harry Hopman's, rented part of it, and they rented these individual apartments, and I guess every apartment had a television set. I don't know if, I guess you're talking about a day room. I don't remember.
Do you recall the room number that you stayed in?
No, I have no idea.
There, I have a 2-page document from the Harry Hopman Saddlebrook International Tennis Club. I'm giving copies to each council. May I have that marked exhibit next in order?
New 77.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Menendez, I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 277. I want you to take a look at the 2 pages of that document.
Oh, the 2 pages, I'm sorry. Okay.
Mr. Menendez, does that refresh your recollection as to whether you and your brother were at that camp on July 31st, 1989?
No.
It does not.
No, I don't quite understand what it is. If you could just explain it to me. I mean, good.
I would object to having it explained.
Well, counsel, at this point, your client asked a question, and it's up to the prosecutor to ask another question.
Mr. Menendez, asking you to take a look at page 2 of Exhibit 277. Does that indicate your name on that?
Objection, the document speaks for itself.
Overruled.
Oh, yes, okay. That's
Do
right.
you understand that part of it?
Yeah, I didn't know you were referring to the name up here. Yes, then it does.
Okay. And with respect to taking a look at this document then, and taking a look at the dates thereon, does that refresh your recollection as to where you were on July 31st, 1989?
Yes, on July 31st, I suppose it's not accurate. I wasn't there August 4th.
Okay, I'm asking you...
But on July 31st, yes, it does.
Okay. Now, as to the first page, sir, does that refresh your recollection as to whether your brother was there on that date as well?
Yes, it does.
Okay, and was he there also?
Yes, he was.
And furthermore, sir, with respect to the complex where you and your brother were staying, does that refresh your recollection as to which complex that would have been?
Complex 4?
Same complex?
Yes.
Mr. Menendez, with respect to the date of August 18th, 1989, you had indicated that you had a meeting set up with Dr. Oziel on that day,
Yes, I did.
and you indicated that you had canceled that appointment.
Yes, I did.
Do you recall when it was that you canceled it, and did you cancel it personally?
I don't, I'm not sure if I canceled it personally. I believe it was after Tuesday that I canceled it.
And was it the policy that, as you understood it, that if you canceled on what they called short notice, that you would be billed for the session?
Dr. Oziel usually billed me for whenever I had a session and whenever I canceled it, whether it was short notice or not.
Did you actually talk to Dr. Oziel's secretary when you would make an appointment or cancel an appointment?
I believe so. His secretary's name was Sandy, and I believe that I spoke with her personally. I don't know if I did on that date, but that's how it would go about.
Okay. May I approach, Your Honor, with the Exhibit 97?
Yes.
Menendez, I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 97 as part of the package. It's 97A, B, C, and D. Okay, are you familiar with these?
Not completely, but if you could just show me where to look.
So with respect to 97A, that would reflect the 1988 visits, is that correct?
Yes.
And with respect to 97B, do you see the entry for August 18th?
Yes.
And does that indicate that you canceled the session on short notice?
Yes, it does.
Did you cancel that session on that day, that is the 18th of August?
I don't remember. It was between Tuesday and Friday that I canceled it after I spoke with my brother.
Was it the day that you actually went to San Diego? That you
No,
canceled?
it wouldn't have been the same day. It may have been Thursday, if that's what short notice means. I really don't know.
Now, you felt that you wanted to talk to Dr. Oziel about something on the 18th?
Yeah, well, not on the 18th. I felt I wanted to talk to him on, I think it was Monday, the 14th, that I made the appointment with him. Sometime between Sunday and Tuesday, I made the appointment with him because I wanted to talk to him about this problem.
You had a good relationship with Dr. Oziel and you wanted him to help you out?
Overall.
No, that's not the reason. I don't know what kind of a relationship I had with Dr. Oziel. What my dad told me on Sunday was such a hard thing for me to be able to handle. I just felt really terrible, and he was the only one I saw to talk to.
Now, this question, I've been requested by the Beverly Hills Police Department to just specify.
Objection, Your Honor, to the introduction.
Okay, why don't you just ask a question?
I know we've gone over, sir, about the Mulholland Drive where you deposited the shotguns.
Yes.
When you were heading on Mulholland, which direction were you going?
I went up Coldwater.
352, it's a discovery question.
Exactly right. Join the objection.
Overall.
Thank you, Your Honor.
I went up Coldwater, and we made a left.
Left on Mulholland?
Yes.
Now, when you got out of the car, did you go down a hill, which would have been on the passenger side, or did you cross the street to the other side?
No, the hill would have been on the passenger side. So if you're going down Mulholland, the hill went down toward the valley side. That's where the hill went down.
And you had indicated that there were big trees in that area?
Yeah, I just remember all sorts of forest all around on both sides of the road.
And on the other side of the road, did the hill go up, or did it also go downhill toward the LA side?
I don't remember it going up, but I can't be positive about that.
Now, Mr. Menendez, you had indicated that your mother throughout your life would help you with your schoolwork,
Yes, she would.
and she would help you to fill out applications.
She did my applications.
Okay. Asking you to take a look at the photograph on the board, Exhibit 7. Do you see the paperwork, the letters that are near your mother on the floor?
Yeah, there's all sorts of things there.
When you turned on the lights after shooting your parents and wanting to go back to pick up the shells, did you notice what those letters were?
I didn't look.
At some time later, did you, when you came back and your brother called 911, did you actually went in to see your parents again, didn't you?
Yes.
And at that point, did you see what your mother had next to her as she lay there?
Object to the former question.
I didn't care what she had next to her. I wanted to see them.
You know, I have another photograph. I have that marked as 278.
278.
Menendez, I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 278. Actually, let me just show it to you here. Does this appear to be the area of the coffee table indicated in the middle of this photograph, sir? The Exhibit 7?
Yes.
That photograph?
It appears to be, yes.
Can you see what that is that was next to your mother, the letters?
How to enroll, attend without obligation, some sort of parking, registration, etc.
And where is that from?
I assume it's from UCLA.
Does it in fact say UCLA there with respect to the parking?
Yeah, right in the park.
Okay. Now, you've testified, sir, that your mother was going to kill you that night, correct?
Yes.
And that's still your belief, is that correct?
It's still my belief to this day.
Yes.
Well, if I knew they didn't have any weapons when I walked in the room, I would not have walked in the room. I don't know what my belief to this day is. No, I can't be sure that that's my belief to this day.
Now, if your mother had been planning to kill you, would she have been filling out your application for UCLA?
Objection, Your Honor. It's argumentative and calls for speculation.
Sustained.
I have nothing further to thank you, Your Honor.
Redirect.
All right, so now we are on to redirect with, I'm assuming, Leslie Abramson will be doing the questioning again.
I may approach, Your Honor, with 277.
All right.
Mr. Menendez, first I want to call your attention to page 2. 277 has your name. Page 2 has your name on it. Is that right?
Yes.
What is 277? Do you know?
I have no idea. It says...
Well, don't tell me what it says. Do you have any idea what that is?
No.
Have you ever seen something like that before?
No.
Then how can it refresh your recollection about anything?
He was saying that this reflects my recollection.
No. The question is, not can you read the document, but does it really make you remember something that you didn't otherwise remember?
No.
Let's first take through the one that's in your name, okay? All right. Now, it's a series of dates, is that right?
Yes.
Dates for what? Can you tell?
No, I have no idea.
Now, the date of August 9th, for example. Do you know where you were on August 9th?
Yes,
Were you at Harry Hopman's in Wesley Chapel near Tampa, Florida?
I was in Florida.
Where were you on August 9th?
I believe I was in Chicago or on a plane back to Los Angeles.
What day did you come back to Los Angeles from Chicago?
August 9th.
So you couldn't have been there then, could you?
No.
And August 4th, 1989, do you know where you were that day?
Yes.
What were you doing that day?
I believe I was playing tennis in Michigan.
Kalamazoo.
Yes.
So you couldn't have been there on that day, and that shows up in this document too, right?
Yes.
Now, August 3rd, how'd you get to Michigan, by the way?
I flew to Michigan.
In a commercial airplane?
Yes, I
Do
believe
you
so.
know what day you flew to Michigan?
No.
Okay. So this says August 3rd. Do you think you were there on August 3rd in Florida, or do you think you were on an airplane to Michigan, or do you think you were in Michigan on that day?
I believe August 3rd was the date that the tournament started.
The tournament in Kalamazoo.
Registration date.
Okay. And were you there to register?
Yes.
So on August 3rd, you were in Michigan.
Yes, sorry.
So
Objection sustained. The answer is struck.
where were you on August 3rd?
I'm sure I was in Michigan. I was in Chicago the day before, so.
So does it tell you anything about where you were to see the date of August 3rd on this document from Hopkins?
No.
Let's go to the one for your brother then. Now again, you see that on the top of this document they have some dates there that say arrive and depart.
Yes.
Now, were you at Hopkins on July 20th? Do you know?
I know that I wasn't.
Where were you on July 20th?
I believe that was the time when the clay courts were being played in Tennessee.
In Louisville?
Yes.
So on August 20th, do you believe you were, strike that, on July 20th, you think you were in Tennessee?
Yes.
Kentucky, actually. Louisville?
Yeah, Kentucky.
Kentucky.
Yes, I was in Kentucky.
Quito, Peru. By the way, do you know what Quito is while we're on the subject?
It's in Peru.
No, it's in, did you ever hear of Quito, Ecuador?
Yeah, I guess it's in Ecuador.
Capital of Ecuador. Did you ever learn that in geography lesson?
Not that I remember.
That's okay, you're in good company. Now, so on July 20th, you're not in Florida.
No.
So this, how could it tell you anything about who is in Florida on July 20th if you're not there?
I don't know.
Okay, so the fact that it shows July 20th on a bill under your brother's name, that doesn't tell you your brother's there either, does it?
No.
Now, let's go to the bottom of this record. You see August 10th, 1989 on your brother's supposed record?
Yes.
Where was your brother on August 10th, 1989?
He was in California.
And where were you?
I was in California.
And you saw him on August 10th, didn't you?
Yes.
And on August, at least 4th, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th, you are where?
I'm in Michigan.
And when you're in Michigan, Mr. Menendez, do you remember having any contact with your brother back in California?
Yes.
So do you think that, do you believe your brother was in Florida when you were in Michigan? Or was he in California, or do you know?
I don't believe he was in Florida.
Okay. Now, on what basis do you have to say where you were on July 31st, before you ever saw these records?
Just my own recollection that I was one of two places.
Okay. You recall that you played in a tournament in Kalamazoo, correct?
Yes.
And do you recall that just before you went to that tournament, you were in training?
Yes.
And was Hopman's the place where you trained?
If that was the name, it was Saddlebrook. Yes, Saddlebrook Way, exactly. Hopman's.
Saddlebrook's the country club. Hopman's is the name of the tennis camp that's on the grounds of the country club.
Yes, I can't be sure that I was there on July, any of those days, though.
You know you were there before Kalamazoo.
Yes.
Now, did you also, while you were in Florida, visit your Aunt Martha?
Yes, that's why I can't be sure.
And Aunt Martha lives in Florida?
Yes.
She doesn't live in Tampa, does she?
No, she lives about 2 hours outside of Tampa.
Well, she lives, where does she live?
She lives in West Palm Beach.
Okay. And at any time during that training period before Kalamazoo, did you visit your Aunt Martha at her home in West Palm Beach?
Yes.
And do you now remember on what day or days?
No, it was soon after her birthday, because I remember that she had somehow found out where I was and called me to say that I missed her birthday and that she wanted to see me, and so I slept overnight at her house.
Okay, if I could have a microphone.
He was a great tennis player, I believe.
And is that who founded that camp in Florida?
I believe so.
Now, did you also attend Harry Hopman's tennis camp in Florida before you played in the tournament in Louisville?
Yes.
And in fact, when you went to the tournament in Louisville, did you have with you clothing you had purchased at Hopman's?
Yes.
T-shirts and stuff?
Yes.
Okay. I'm
All
trying
right,
to
let's
find...
just continue and go on
Yes.
to something else.
All right. Well, it's complicated. Now, Mr. Menendez, you were asked about making an appointment to see Dr. Oziel and then canceling it. You recall that?
Yes.
And you testified just a few minutes ago that you wanted to talk to him about this problem.
Yes.
And were you going to tell him that your father was molesting you and that it wasn't going to end as you had hoped and prayed for 3 years?
Definitely not.
Objection sustained. The answer is correct.
What was the problem that you were going to discuss with him had you seen him, or that you intended to discuss with him?
That I no longer wanted to live.
That you what?
No longer wanted to live.
Had you ever seen any other therapist?
No.
Did you know that your mother was seeing a therapist?
Yes.
And did you know how it was that you wound up being directed to Dr. Oziel?
Yes.
And how was that?
Through my mother's therapist.
And did you know what his name was?
Yes.
What was his name?
Lester Summerfield.
And had you received information after your parents died that your mother might have left something with Dr. Summerfield?
Yes, I did.
And what was that information?
Just that she might have left she might have left a letter with Lester.
That your mother might have left a letter with Lester?
Yes.
Did she refer to Dr. Summerfield as Lester?
She referred to him as her closest confidant, Lester.
And did you know when she was alive who that was?
No, I don't even remember if I knew the name Lester Summerfield before she was alive or after.
Well, the question was, how did you get to Dr. Oziel? From her, is that what you said?
From her therapist, yes.
Okay. Did you know it was coming from her therapist?
Yes.
So you knew she was seeing a therapist?
Yes.
Overall.
Now, where did you receive the information that Dr. Summerfield or Lester might have a letter?
From a suicide note that she had left that I found afterwards.
A suicide note you found afterwards?
Yes.
Now, you had found a suicide letter of some kind in 1986. Isn't that what you've already
Yeah, I
testified?
found another one in 1986.
In when?
In 1986.
You found another one in
I
1986?
found the first one in 1986.
Within a few days of your parents' death, a number of your relatives came to California.
Yes.
And was one of those relatives your father's mother, your grandmother?
Yes.
And was your grandmother at the Beverly Hills house right after your parents died?
Yes, she stayed there.
She stayed there?
Yes.
Did everyone else stay at the Bellage or the Bel Air Hotel?
Yes.
Did your grandmother stay at the house by herself, or did anyone else stay with her?
There were so many relatives there that I don't remember if anyone else stayed with her.
You did not stay at the house during that week, did you?
No.
Now, can you just describe generally what your grandmother was doing, particularly in those first few days, at the house after your parents died?
She was going.
Objection sustained. The answer is
Well,
correct.
you were over at the house. You just didn't sleep there.
So let's ask it in a leading fashion.
Were you over at the house during that week?
Yes,
Were you over there more than once?
I was over there every day.
And did you see your grandmother when you were over there every day?
Yes.
And what was she doing there?
She was going through everything in the house, specifically my parents' things.
And what was she doing with things as she was going through them?
She was segregating them out, putting some in here and putting some in there.
Was she taking things out of the house?
No, I don't believe she was taking anything out of the house. I know she did eventually. She sort of took over, and nothing left the house without her permission, and you weren't allowed to do things.
All right, let's start with this. You say she took over. How soon, how quickly after she arrived did she take over?
Immediately.
And you said you couldn't take things out of the house. Are you referring to yourself or to other people or both?
To basically everyone.
And what about, you said she was looking primarily for things of your parents?
Yes.
And where was she looking?
In my parents' bedroom.
Was she looking in other parts of the house as well?
Yes.
Now, Mr. Menendez, you heard testimony of other witnesses that there was in your house in Calabasas, for example, many, many, many boxes that occupied the living room area.
Yes.
And were there boxes somewhere at the Beverly Hills house?
Yes.
Boxes from previous moves?
Yes.
What was your mother's habit and practice, Mr. Menendez? When you'd move from one house to another, would she unpack all the boxes, or would she keep some packed, or what?
She'd keep most packed, and they sort of got more and more boxes as she went along.
And was your grandmother going through packed boxes as well?
Yes.
Now, you testified at some point you were concerned that your grandmother might find something in your father's closet that you didn't want her to see?
Yes.
And I think you testified you took those things out of your father's closet?
Yes.
And I think you indicated that a cousin or cousins got rid of it for you?
Yes.
Now, Mr. Menendez, when you were arrested in March of 1990, where were you living?
In Marina Del Rey.
And did you, on that occasion, also request the help of a cousin or cousins to get rid of something?
Yes.
And on that occasion, when you were arrested, do you know which cousin you specifically asked?
Yes.
And on that occasion in March, who did you ask?
My cousin Andy.
And had you been with your cousin Andy for some period of time, been together with him when you asked him to do you this favor?
Well,
let me request. You testified you flew here from Florida.
Yes.
Who flew with you?
Oh, Andy flew with me then, yes.
Now, when you got here on this flight from Florida, did you have an opportunity to go back to your apartment?
No, I was taken from the airport by Detective Zoller to Los Angeles County Jail.
And you never had an opportunity to go back to your apartment, I take it?
No.
Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And you had asked your cousin Andy to get rid of something from your apartment?
Yes.
Now, what did you expect to happen to your possessions in your apartment when you were arrested in March of 1990?
I expected my my relatives to go through it and store some of it and box it and so on.
Where was your grandmother living in March of 1990 when you were arrested?
At the Beverly Hills house.
So she was living here?
Oh, yes.
Did you have any expectation with respect to your grandmother having any contact with your personal possessions in your apartment?
Yes.
What did you expect?
I expected that her, my Aunt Martha, and different people to go through my apartment.
And was it in anticipation of that you asked Andy to get rid of something?
Objection sustained.
Why did you want Andy, without describing, why did you want Andy to get rid of something?
Because there were some things in my apartment that I wanted Andy to get rid of before my relatives saw.
Okay, so there were things you didn't want them to see.
Yes.
And to the best of your knowledge, did Andy do that, get rid of these things by himself or with the help of someone else? Well, Your Honor, it has to do with his state of mind. It's not being offered for the truth. Well, I'd like to be heard on this. Okay. Now, you testified that there were these things removed from your father's closet, and you had asked who to remove those from the house?
My cousin Henry.
And to the best of your current recollection, did Andy help Henry on that occasion?
No.
To the best of your current knowledge, did Henry help Andy on the second occasion?
Yes.
best of your knowledge, did your cousin Henry, during that week after your parents died, get rid of the things you had given him to get rid of?
Yes.
Did you ever see those things again?
No.
How is it that all of the questions that Mr. Kuriyama was asking were involving speculation or inferences, and those were fine, no problem, ask away. But she asks a question that might have a little well, I don't even think it's speculation because it was probably what he was told, but we can't get into that. Sorry. Even though it has everything to do with him and his interactions with his cousins, but let's not get into it. Speculation?
Don't discuss this case with anyone. That's about it. We'll
Mr. Menendez, show me the photograph that's been marked 279. Okay, would you look at that?
Yes.
Okay, and who's that in the photograph?
That's myself.
And where are you? What city or town are you in when that photograph was taken?
Kentucky. I'm in Wendy's.
And what city?
Louisville?
Louisville.
Louisville.
All right. And you were there for that particular tennis tournament?
Yes, I was.
And do you remember these tournaments based on the surface of the tennis courts you were playing on?
Yes, I do.
And what surface was being played on at Louisville?
Clay. These were the clay courts.
And if you would look at the lower right-hand corner of that photograph, does that photograph have a date on it?
Yes, it does.
And what was the date?
July 27th, 1989.
Now, one other thing before you give it to me. Are you wearing a T-shirt in that photograph?
Yes.
And where is the T-shirt from?
Saddlebrook Country Club, Harry Hopman's.
From Hopman's.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is it your recollection that you were at Hopman's before this date of July 27th, 1989, when you're wearing the Hopman's T-shirt in Louisville?
Yes, I was.
So let me show you 277 again, this document that Mr. Kuriyama showed you. Do you see any dates on this document that would cover the period when you were there, when you obtained that T-shirt?
No, there are not.
Okay. Now let me show you this other photograph.
Why is this record so messed up? Why are there all these dates that the boys weren't even at this Hopman's or whatever club? This is weird, right? That this particular exhibit is so off with all the dates. It's very curious. Was something fudged? Was something put together at the last minute and it's just not accurate? I don't know. Are they really bad record keepers at Hopman's? At this
Photograph, which is 280. Okay.
Yes.
And who's in that photograph?
My mom and my dad.
And where was that photograph taken?
I believe in Kentucky as well.
In Louisville?
Yes.
And what kind of place was it taken in?
At a hotel.
And is this inside a hotel room? Is it inside the dining room? And where is it?
I think it's inside the hotel room.
Did you all stay in the same hotel room?
No.
And where did you stay at this hotel in relation to your parents?
I stayed in the next room, next door.
And did your father, during the time you were in Louisville playing the clay courts, ever visit you in your hotel room?
Yes.
For what purpose?
For sex.
Mr. Menendez, you recall Mr. Kuriyama suggesting to you that your mother was only 5 feet 2 inches tall?
Yes.
Now I have another document, and I'd like to mark it next to your order. No, not next to your order. I'm sorry. I'd like to mark it 291. 291.
You have some other documents that you'll be marking?
They're already marked, Your Honor. A series of photographs in between.
291.
Thank you. Mr. Menendez, do you recognize this to be an enlargement of your mother's driver's license?
Yes.
And do you see the height that's indicated on that driver's license?
Yes.
And what height is it?
5'5".
And do you see the date of birth, October 14th, 1944?
Yes.
Was October 14th the day of your mother's birthday?
Yes, it was.
Was she born in 1944?
No.
When was she born?
1941.
Did your mother lie about her age?
Sustained.
Did you ever hear your mother lying about her age?
Yes.
Was your mother older than your father?
Yes.
By how much?
3 years.
What? That's why she brought her age down. She didn't want to be older than him.
Now, Your Honor, I have a series of photographs marked 281 through 288. Actually, I have them marked for 290, but I'm only going to use the 288 at this moment. Mr. Menendez, you testified that on August 18th, you and your brother went to a store in an effort to buy handguns. You recall that?
Yes.
And you testified that you went to the Big Five in Santa Monica. You recall that?
Yes.
Mr. Menendez, when you testified to that, did you know where the Big Five in Santa Monica was?
I thought I did.
Where did you think it was?
On Santa Monica Boulevard, 1 and 2 blocks away from the freeway.
Okay. And if I were to tell you that the Big Five in Santa Monica is 1.5 miles from the freeway and it's on Wilshire Boulevard, okay, would you accept that for the moment?
Yes.
Now, when was it that you, let me ask you this, from the day that you went to this store where you inquired about handguns, until the day that you were arrested, did you have in mind that it was a Big Five store?
No.
As of the day that you were arrested, did you realize or know that the store in San Diego where you had bought guns from was a Big Five?
No.
When was it or what occurred that made you understand that it was a Big Five in San Diego where you bought the shotguns?
When I read about it in the paper.
And after you were arrested?
Yes.
Now, over the course of the 3 years that you've lived in California, have you frequented sporting goods stores?
Yes, of course.
Do you always go to the same chain or the same type or the same one?
No, it doesn't matter.
What different chains or types of sporting goods stores have you gone to over the 3 years that you lived in California?
Sports Mart, Turner's, Oshman's. I know I used to go to Herman's a lot, Sears.
And Big Five?
Big Five, of course. I don't even know the names of all of them.
Okay. And you went frequently to such stores?
Yes, I used to play tennis, and so I'd go there a lot.
Okay. Now, which was the stronger memory, if you can compare them? The memory that the store was on Santa Monica Boulevard, 1.5 blocks from the freeway, or the memory that it was a Big Five?
That it was within 1.5 blocks from the freeway in Santa Monica.
Do you know now where that store, the store that you looked at guns, was?
No.
Now, I'm going to show you some photographs. Starting with 281. The question is, does 281, what's depicted there, look at all familiar to you?
Yes. Yes.
Does it in any way resemble the store that you believe you were in on that Friday, August 18th?
Yes, it does.
And drawing your attention to what's in the center of that photograph, what does that appear to be? This object.
Those are handguns in a glass case.
Now, would you look at the next photograph? Is that a slightly closer view and a better colored photograph?
Yes.
And does that case appear similar to the case in the store that you were in on August 18th?
Yeah, it had several levels.
Now, you recall testifying earlier that the top level had handguns.
Yes.
You recall testifying earlier that the handguns you sought did not have the revolver part, in other words, the cylinder part.
Yes.
Would you look onto the next, let's go 2 down. Let's go to this one. Look at 286. Do those appear to be the kind of non-revolver guns that you saw on August 18th?
Which one? They both appear, no.
No?
No, they do not have revolvers. I didn't hear the question.
Okay. If you don't hear the question, say you don't hear the question. Let's look at 286, this one, okay? Do you see the guns on the top row?
Yes.
Do those appear to be the same shaped guns that you saw on August 18th?
Yeah.
This picture was doing.
Yes.
Okay, now you want to look at the next one, so go ahead. Those appear to be the same shaped guns as the one you saw on August 18th.
Objection. There's no foundation for this one.
We will tie them.
Objection overruled, but stop leading the witness. Ask him another confession.
Okay?
Yes.
Did these appear similar?
Yes.
The ones that just went up are 86 and 87. Now going back to 283, in that photograph, are there different things on the different shelves of this glass display case?
Yes.
What's on the top shelf?
Handguns.
I would like to show you 284 next. Do you see what's up on the wall in that photograph?
Yes.
Now, do you have any recollection in the store that you were in on August 18th to seeing long guns?
Yes, there were a rack of them behind.
Does that appear at all similar to what you saw in the store on the 18th?
Yes, it's very similar.
And this is 284. Now, do you recall whether or not there was ammunition behind this glass case?
Yes, there was.
Showing you the last two photographs, 285 and then 288, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Does that appear to be similar to what you saw on August 18th?
Yes.
Now, Mr. Menendez, the guns that you are looking at, that you've seen in these photographs, are they real or are they fake?
Apparently they're not real.
What do they look like to you?
They look like real handguns.
Okay, you know where these photos were taken, don't you?
Yes.
Looking at these photographs, can you tell if they're real or they're fake?
No.
Where were these photos taken, Mr. Menendez?
At the Big Five in Santa Monica.
And do you know when these photos were taken at the Big Five in Santa Monica?
Sometime between Friday and today.
Between last Friday and today?
Yes.
So the whole lie from the prosecution that the Big Five doesn't even sell guns is a big hoax because they just took photos of their gun displays the weekend during trial. So remember, the prosecution keeps telling us, well, they don't sell guns at the Big Five anymore. They stopped selling them in blah, blah, whatever year. And that's not true. Apparently, they still do sell them.
Now, Mr. Menendez, do you know if the guns that you saw on August 18th, 1989, if any of them were in fact real?
I believe that they were.
You believe that they were, but do you know if they were?
No.
Did you handle any of them?
No.
Did anybody take one out of the case?
No, I said before, no one did.
Did anybody put ammunition in it?
No.
Did anybody show you how to operate it?
No.
Did anybody describe to you what the make or manufacturer or caliber or type or model of the gun was?
I don't remember that.
You don't remember it?
I don't believe they did that. They didn't take it out of the case.
Now, what is the thing that most stands out in your mind about this trip to a store on August 18th here in Los Angeles? What is it that most impressed you about that trip?
That we couldn't get handguns there.
And why couldn't you get handguns there? Because they didn't have handguns? Is that what you understood?
Sustained.
Why was it you couldn't get handguns there?
Because there was a 2-week waiting period.
Now, you have described in part some conversation with the clerk. Is that right?
Yes.
How many people were taking part in this exchange with the clerk?
My brother, I, and the clerk.
Were there any other customers around or engaging the clerk's attention during the time that you and your brother were in front of the glass case?
Yeah, I believe there were all kinds of people around.
And were you having a continuous conversation with the clerk, or was it a series of brief conversations?
Objection.
It was not a continuous conversation. He was distracted.
Now, do you recall whether or not you asked him any specific questions about any particular gun?
I just remember the one specific question that I asked.
And what was the one specific question that you asked?
I asked if one of the guns, I pointed to one, was a real gun.
And what was his response, if you can remember, to that specific question?
He said that it wasn't, that it was a BB gun.
Now, do you recall making any assumptions at that point?
Objection, Beating.
Overall.
Excuse me?
Do you recall in your mind making any assumptions at that point about any of the other guns?
At that point? I don't remember.
Do you recall making any assumptions at any point about any of the other guns?
Yes.
And what assumption did you make about other guns?
I assumed that they were real.
Now, Mr. Menendez, do you remember the exact words that you used in your conversation with the clerk when you indicated you wanted to buy a handgun?
No.
Do you remember the general gist of of whatever it was you said to him?
Yes.
What did you say to him?
I told him that we needed to buy a handgun for protection now, today.
And do you recall do you remember specifically what this clerk said back to you, or just the gist?
I don't remember specifically what he said back. I never did.
But what do you recall, though, being at least what you got from what he was saying?
Like I said, I don't remember the conversation back and forth, but I know that he told me that you could not buy handguns in one day.
Did he say you can't buy that gun, or did he say you can't buy a gun like that, or any words to that effect? Did he say that immediately after you had said you needed to buy a handgun for self-protection?
I'm sure that I indicated that I needed to buy it right then.
My question was, did he say it after you said something about self-protection? Did you just testified you said something about self-protection, is that correct?
Yes.
How soon after that did the clerk say, there's a 2-week waiting period for whatever he said, guns like that gun, a gun?
I believe right after.
Now, when you testified about this last Friday, do you recall saying that you couldn't remember clearly, but you remembered looking through the case of the different guns?
Yes.
Do you remember testifying that the three of us, meaning yourself, your brother, and the clerk, were talking, but you don't really remember?
Yes.
Do you remember testifying in response to another question?
This was last Friday?
The last Friday. That you didn't remember the conversation, that you think you were talking about what the guns were. Do you recall that?
Yes.
That you asked if you could buy one now?
Yes.
Now, Mr. Menendez, looking at that rack of long guns, if you look at the upper right-hand photograph.
Okay.
Do you know if any of those are real or fake?
I'm not sure I know anything anymore, but I believe that they are real.
Anyway.
I believe that they are real.
You believe all of them in that photograph are real, is that correct?
I don't know. I thought that some were real and that some were not.
Some what were real?
Some of the shotguns and long rifles.
You said you believed some were real and some were not. When are you talking about? When did you believe that?
At the store.
And you believed at the store that some of the long guns were real and some were not real? Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying.
And did you believe the same about the handguns?
Yes.
Now, Mr. Menendez, are you aware of the fact that there is a Big Five store on Sepulveda Boulevard near the 405 freeway?
Yes.
You're aware of that since when?
Since this week.
Are you aware of the fact that there is a sports mart on Sepulveda Boulevard near the freeway?
Sustained.
Mr. Menendez, are you identifying these photographs with certainty as the place where you had this inquiry about guns, or as a similar looking place?
It's similar looking.
At this point, do you know where you were when you had this discussion with the man about buying a handgun?
No.
Just to complete the series, Your Honor, let me show you these two photographs. Do you know where that is?
I'm not sure.
Just put it up. Your Honor, this is just a view of the street. And it reads with a blue street sign, Franklin and Wilshire.
And that is Exhibit
289. Now I'm going to show you this other photograph, which is 290. You can see what that is, can't you?
Yes.
What is that photograph of?
The Big Five sporting goods store.
Okay. Can you tell from the photograph which Big Five it is?
No.
You want the record to reflect this bears a street number of 3121. Mr. Menendez, to change the subject, you recall being shown on the witness stand a record of your Department of Motor Vehicle history.
Yes.
Now, you recall testifying that you had lost your driver's license and that you had received a ticket for driving without a license in your possession on July 7th, 1989.
Yes.
And you recall on cross-examination you told Mr. Kuriyama you had also received a ticket for driving without a license in your possession on June 30th.
Yes.
Have you seen that DMV record again?
Yes.
Now, what year, June 30th, did you also receive a ticket for driving without a license?
In 1988.
And did you lose your driver's license more than once?
Yes.
You testified that on the night of August 20th, you changed your pants from clothing that you had in your car. Recall that?
Yes.
Why did you have clothing in your car?
Because it would pile up over time.
Why would it be there in the first place?
Because I would change to and from the tennis matches. Often tennis matches were in Long Beach or far away, and I'd bring the clothes with me.
Okay, would you change after the tennis match?
Sometimes I'd change in the car.
And would you change into street clothes?
Yes.
So why would street clothes pile up in the car?
Excuse me?
Why would street clothes pile up in the car?
Because I would change when I went to tennis matches.
Or you change when you go to the match?
Yes.
Okay. And would you change after the match also?
Sometimes it depended.
Mr. Kuriyama indicated that in one of the rooms of your home there was a Martin Luther King poster. You recall that question?
Yes.
Who bought the Martin Luther King poster, Mr. Menendez?
My brother.
Where did he buy it?
I believe in Venice.
When did he buy it?
I believe the week before.
The week before your parents died?
Yes.
And in your home, was this poster just propped against the wall, or was it framed and hung?
I don't believe it was hung, but it was up against the wall. Lyle was going to take it with him to college.
Do you know a young woman named Tracy Baker?
Yes.
Was she a friend of yours or a friend of your brother's?
She was a friend of my brother's.
In the fall of 1988, do you remember an occasion when Miss Baker was at your home in Beverly Hills for dinner?
Yes, I do.
And did something unusual happen?
Yes.
And would you tell the jury what happened?
She was over eating dinner, and my mom was serving. Apparently the maid was off or something like that. And we were all sitting down at the table, and my mom had served dinner, and my dad pushed the tray away, this plate, toward my mom, and spilled something, and told my brother and I to get up from the table.
Do you
specify again what
Yeah, was this in the fall of 1988?
Yes.
Now, do you recall whether or not your father said anything to your mother as he pushed
She started it all out by saying the month and year in which it happened, so they just weren't paying attention.
the plate away, or at any time during this?
Yes.
What did he say? It's not being offered for the truth, Your Honor, but for the defendant's state of mind. Thank you, Your Honor.
He looked at my mom, and then he said something like, "What did you do to the food?" or "What are you up to?" or something like that.
Okay. Now, did you understand what was going on?
Yes.
Again, it is offered for his state of mind.
Only for his state of mind, Your Honor. What, Mr. Menendez, did you believe was going on?
I believe that my dad thought my mom poisoned the food.
Was this the only time that this sort of thing happened, where your dad pushed the food away and left?
No.
And on the other occasions when it happened, would he say anything to your mother?
Yes.
Now, did you eat at home your mother's cooking when your father wasn't around?
Yes.
And how would you know to eat the food or not eat the food?
I would normally eat the food unless I thought something was very wrong with my mother. You could usually tell what my mom's mood was or what she was up to by the way she looked or different signs she'd give you.
And were there times when you, without your father's prompting, would not eat the food because of either a look or her mood or something she had said? Were there times when you didn't eat food when your father wasn't home?
Yes.
And what was the basis for your refusal to eat food on those occasions?
Sometimes she said earlier in the day that she was going to poison us all, and so I wouldn't eat the food. And sometimes it was just my belief that she might have done something to the food.
Now, on this particular occasion, we'll strike that. Do you ever recall this happening, your father refusing to eat the food and asking your mother this sort of question, when there was a stranger present, apart from this time?
No.
And on this occasion, when Miss Baker is there, what happened after your father said something to your mother?
We left. He told us to get up from the table, and Lyle, I, Tracy, and I don't believe anyone else was there, left. We went out to eat.
You and Lyle and Tracy?
Yes.
Anybody else?
I don't remember.
How about your father?
Well, of course, my dad's the one that told us to get up from the table.
Okay, so you and your father, Tracy and Lyle, went out to eat.
Yes.
What'd your mother do?
She stayed home.
Have a moment, Your Honor. Now, Mr. Menendez, you testified that you were very concerned when you learned in May of 1989 that your father was talking about disowning you.
Yes.
Okay? Now, what did disown mean to you?
Death. That he was going to kill me.
And why would disowning you, cutting you off altogether, mean death?
Well, it was just my impression of what it meant, because he clearly wasn't going to disown me.
I don't understand why you say that. Why wasn't he going to disown you?
Because he wasn't going to let me leave the house.
Why?
Well, because obviously the things that were going on between him and I, he was never going to let me leave the house with that information.
So he wasn't going to let you take the secret away? Is that what you
Yes.
Objection sustained. The answer is true.
You say he wasn't going to let you leave the house. What do you think would have been his fear?
That I would eventually tell someone, or that I would have told someone out of anger toward him or something like that.
So when you heard this
I mean, what did he actually think? That he was just going to keep his kids in his life and controlling their lives completely for the rest of their adult lives? I mean, seriously. And was he going to continue doing the things he was doing to Erik when Erik's married off and has a family of his own? Doubt it. He'd probably prey on their kids or his grandkids. So sick. You see why it's just, yeah, don't abuse people. People, be nice to others.
talk about disown, what did you imagine happening?
That he would kill me.
Now, Mr. Kuriyama asked you something about wanting to kill your parents. On August 20th, 1989, Mr. Menendez, did you want to kill your parents?
No.
What did you want?
I just wanted the sex to end.
Is that why you shot them, to end the sex?
No, at that point I just wanted to live.
And on Tuesday, when you talked to your brother, did you want to set in motion a chain of events that would result in your shooting your parents?
No, definitely not.
What did you want by talking to your brother on Tuesday?
I wanted the sex between my father and I to end.
Now, in the fall of 1988, you've testified that there was an act of sodomy between yourself and your father in which he used a knife. Do you remember testifying about that?
Yes.
Objection beyond scope.
Wish to hear that?
It's just a follow-up to this line of questioning which was prompted, Your Honor.
You wish to hear it sidebar?
Yes, if you wish. Did I have an answer to the last one, Your Honor?
Well, let's see if you have a question in mind first. Will I ask it again?
Yeah, I'll ask it again. Mr. Menendez, you recall testifying that in the fall of 1988, your father sodomized you in an incident involving a knife.
Yes.
And how did you feel after that?
I felt awful. I couldn't wait to get to college.
And did you tell your brother at that time about the molestation with your father?
No.
And did you have any thoughts at that time about having to kill your father or your mother or anything like that?
No.
And in May of 1989, you've testified was the last time your father sodomized you. Was
Yes.
that a pleasant experience?
No.
And did you tell your brother about it at that time?
No.
And did you have any thoughts at that time that you wanted to kill your parents or you might be forced to kill your parents or anything like that?
No.
How did you cope with these things, Mr. Menendez?
I thought about the future.
And what was there in the future that you believe helped you to cope with this?
Objection, Your Honor.
That I would be able to get away from my father, that the sex would end.
Okay. And what was going to be the vehicle for your getaway?
College.
Now, what was it that you felt after the conversation that you had with your father that Sunday, where he told you he expected you to be sleeping at home several nights a week?
I felt like my life had crumbled. It felt like something that I read in a book.
It felt like something you read in a book?
Yes.
What book? Do you remember? Well, tell us. What is it it made... Tell us what it is that it made you feel like.
I felt like I was... I felt like I no longer wanted to live.
What is it you read in the book that...
It was about a man in a concentration camp who, in Nazi Germany, who thought he was going to get released on March 30th of a date I don't remember. And on March 30th, he wasn't released, and he knew that he wasn't going to be. And on March 31st, he died.
And you felt like it was March 31st?
Objection being said.
And how did you feel that Sunday after your father told you that you'd still have to come home?
I just related to that a lot. I felt like the hope in the future was gone.
I have nothing further, Your Honor.
Any examination on behalf of
Co-defendant?
no.
Any recross?
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Menendez, you recall the testimony of your brother on September 17th, wherein he stated that you and he had gone to the Big Five store in Santa Monica?
Never mind. I just want to know which September 17th you meant.
I believe he said that.
And he testified in front of these juries that you and he had inquired about handguns in that Big Five store in Santa Monica, correct?
I don't know. If he did, then he did.
And he further testified that you and he were in the process of buying a handgun when you were told you weren't going to be able to leave the store with the handgun. Do you remember that?
I know he testified to that, yes.
And that it would take 2 weeks.
Yes, that's what I mainly remember.
And do you recall testimony that you gave on September 27th?
That I recall better.
Volume 94. And this is a question by your attorney, Mrs. Abramson, in which she asks you, on Friday, did you hear your brother testify that you went with him to a gun store, a Big Five in Santa Monica? And you responded, yeah. And inquire about buying handguns? Yes. And were you told that there was a 2-week waiting period? Yes. Is that true? Yes. Did you do that? Yes. Do you remember all of that?
Yes, we did do that. That's exactly right.
Do you remember testifying on October 1st regarding the Big Five in Santa Monica?
What day is October 1st?
It was a Friday.
Last Friday.
Yes.
Do you remember testifying about the Big Five store in Santa Monica?
Objection, vague, Your Honor.
Overruled.
With you questioning me?
Yes.
Yes, I do.
Do you remember testifying that you saw the handguns in a glass case?
I believe I said that. If you could show me the testimony, then I'd be able to clarify what I said.
I'll put it on.
You have it there?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. 16,485. You take a look at your testimony.
Yes. Yes.
Now you testified that you saw handguns in a glass case, correct?
Yes.
And you identified them as being handguns, correct?
Yes, they were.
Do you remember page 16,486? You remember testifying, sir, that you asked if these were real. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And do you remember me asking you, and what did he say? That is the clerk to the store.
Yes.
And you stated, he said he pointed out which ones were and which ones were not. I believe the ones that were not were over to the right. That is the pellet guns or the BB guns. I believe they were over to the right. And the real ones were more in the center where I was. Do you remember making that statement?
Can I finish the paragraph?
Yes.
I said, that's my recollection. I could be wrong. But that is my recollection.
That you saw real guns, and he told you where the real guns were.
That I could be wrong about, but that I saw real guns, yes. When I left that store that day, I believe they were real guns to this day.
And at some point, you picked out a handgun that you thought was appropriate. Is that right? And you answered yes. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And you testified further that as soon as we said, that one looks good, and that type of thing, we talked about, could we get it now?
Excuse me,
Correct?
counsel, would you cite where you're reading from?
16,488.
Yes, what?
Line 9.
Hold on.
Do you
I would
remember?
object that that's misreading the testimony.
Do you remember testifying in that way? You can look at the testimony yourself.
Would you like me to read the paragraph?
Go ahead.
Your question too? You said, do you recall the caliber that you decided on? And I said, I really don't. I wasn't, as soon as we said, that one looks good, and that type of thing, we talked about, could we get it now? How do you go about buying it? That's when he told us we had to, there was some sort of waiting period, and so I didn't, it wasn't an in-depth discussion.
And you indicated to him that you needed to buy 2 handguns, correct?
I believe that's what I indicated to him.
And you remember him telling you that you could not leave the store with the handgun, correct?
Check the state's testimony.
Overruled. That's a question.
If you could show me it,
Did you testify to that?
that I could not leave the store with the handgun, I don't believe so.
You don't recall testifying that way?
Objection, Your Honor, there is no such testimony.
Okay, counsel, let's just objection. That's not evidence. Okay, objection overruled was a question.
Thank you, Your Honor. Do you remember, sir, me asking you the question, page 16,005 store on the morning of August 18th to buy these handguns? Your answer, definitely, without a doubt, I did.
Yes.
And you and Lyle did, and you answered yes, correct?
Yes.
And then the question was, and you and Lyle actually looked in this case, and you selected these guns, and you were told you couldn't leave the store with those handguns because there's a 15-day wait, and you answered yes.
Yes.
And then the question was, Mr. Menendez, did you know that Big Five stopped carrying handguns on March of 1986? And you said, no, I don't know that, correct?
Well, that wasn't the end of my answer.
Do you remember making the statement, sir?
I said, no, I don't know that, Mr. Kuriyama. There were guns there. We did look at them, and he did say we could not carry them anymore.
So you couldn't carry them out of the store that day?
No, that's not what I said.
Sir, are you now trying to tell these juries that it was a pellet gun you were looking at that day?
No, what I'm saying now is that I still believe that there were handguns in the store that I went to. And whether the store, I'm saying now that I was wrong about something. The store that the Big Five was not on Santa Monica Boulevard, 1 or 2 blocks from the freeway. The store that I remember going to was. But if I did go to the Santa Monica Big Five, I still believed that they carried handguns, and apparently they didn't. So my impression was wrong.
Do you remember testifying that the Santa Monica Big Five store was the closest Big Five to your house?
That I knew of, yes.
So you had been to the Santa Monica Big Five store before?
I don't remember it being so, but I'm sure that I did.
Because you testified that you knew where it was. You knew it was the closest one to your house.
I knew that it was the closest one to my house.
I know where stores exist, but I've never been to them. I mean, what's his point there?
I didn't know there was any near my house closer than that.
The man at the Big Five store in Santa Monica told you couldn't leave the store with those handguns, correct?
I don't remember exactly what he said, but my impression was that we had to wait 2 weeks. That
Are
was
you
my
now saying
impression.
that you're assuming that that's what he said?
Excuse me?
When you were questioned by your counsel, you said that you assumed that they were real, wherein you had testified that he had told you that they were real, and you said the real ones were in the center where you were, and the fake ones were off to the side, correct?
No, I said that that's what my impression was, but that I could be wrong, is exactly what I said. But it's still my impression.
You were told those are real handguns you were looking at.
He keeps trying to catch him up in words, and Eric's like, nah, nuh-uh. What I actually said was this, and if you'd let me finish, I could finish my sentence, and, yeah. So, dirty tricks that the prosecutors play to catch you up in words, like definitions, trying to be all sneaky with, well, you said this, did you really mean that, or did you mean this type of thing?
And now that you know that Big Five didn't have real handguns, you're coming up with a different story, aren't you, sir?
Sir, I described exactly where Big Five was to you. I described exactly where it was. I knew you could easily go and check it out. I wasn't lying to you. I still believe that the gun store that I went to carried handguns. When I left that store, my impression was that they looked exactly like real handguns, that they were real handguns. That's what I thought when I left the store, and that's what I thought when I testified. You shocked me when you said that there were no handguns there. I thought you also meant there were no anything that looked like handguns there. And my impression is now there were real handguns there. That's what I believe.
You testified that, in fact, the clerk had told you there were real handguns. In fact, told you couldn't leave the store without waiting for 15 days with that handgun, correct?
Objection asked to answer.
No, that's not exactly what I said. I testified that the clerk said that these are real and that these are not. And I said I believe that's what he said. And I said that he testified I couldn't leave the store without waiting 15 days.
Sir, if there weren't real handguns in the store, you could have bought any one of those pellet guns, correct? And you left the store that day.
I don't know what the waiting period is on pellet guns.
Oh, is there a waiting period on BB guns and pellet guns?
What I'm saying is, I don't know if there is.
Now, he would not have told you that you had a 15-day waiting period unless you were talking about real handguns,
Objection
correct?
to cause for speculation.
In fact, you had seen, or you testified, you saw these real handguns,
Yes.
and that the clerk told you couldn't leave with the real handgun unless you waited 15 days. Isn't that true?
In that paraphrase, I don't know how I could answer that, but my memory is that I had a conversation with the clerk and that Lyle was there that there were other people around, and that we had a discussion about real handguns. And I believe to this day that the guns in that glass case were real, and that he said that we had to wait 15 days to buy a handgun.
Were you imagining this?
No, I wasn't imagining it, sir. It's still in my memory. It's
How rude and condescending. Were you imagining that? Get bent, buddy.
still there, and that's what happened.
Now, you've had about a week to think about what you're going to tell these jurors to explain how you lied about this.
Objection.
I didn't lie.
Wait. Argumentative.
Objection to stand.
Have you been discussing this with your brother?
Objection, Your Honor.
Overrule.
Calls for hearsay.
Certainly I did.
You talked about how we're going to get out of this one?
No, I'll tell you what I have been thinking over the last week, if you'd like me to, though.
Now, you've been thinking about what you can say to explain how there aren't any handguns at the store you said you were at. Is that right?
No, sir. What I was thinking about...
No question pending. Now, Mr. Menendez, you indicated that on August 18th you were suicidal, correct?
Yes, I was.
And you had a meeting set up with
Objection,
Dr.
that misstates his testimony.
Overrule.
And you had a session set up with Dr. Oziel for that day, correct?
I don't believe I did so anymore on August 18th. I had canceled it by then.
You had decided that you wouldn't go to see Dr. Oziel because you had spoken to your brother and you decided that you'd kill your parents instead of killing yourself. Isn't that right?
Definitely not.
Have a moment, Sean. Mr. Menendez, you indicated that your mother was about as tall as your brother, right?
No, I said that I thought she was 3 inches shorter than him.
And do you remember me asking you whether you were aware that the coroner had measured your mother as 5'2"? That I didn't tell you that that's how tall she was, but I indicated to you that the coroner had measured her at 5'2". Isn't that correct?
Yes, apparently.
Did your counsel misstate that?
No.
Excuse me, could you ask that question?
Yeah, did your counsel misstate the question when she asked you?
Object to what his counsel said, Your Honor. It's not
Rephrase the
relevant.
question.
Do you remember when your counsel said that Mr. Kuriyama said that your mother was 5'2"?
Your Honor, I object to that as well.
Apparently the coroner was wrong.
Okay, the question I asked you is whether you were aware that the coroner had measured your mother at 5'2", correct?
The question that you asked?
Yes.
Yes, I believe so.
His questioning, most of it, to me, is wasted. Like, it's not even good, entertaining courtroom kind of stuff. It's so boring. Like, was there a TV in your room? Was it in the other room? Did you walk from one hallway to the other room? Like, what? Like, what specific details of your day? Like, he's so. I can't listen to him anymore. I'm so glad we're almost done. We have about an hour or so left with this, and then we will be done with cross.
I have nothing further to say.
Mr. Menendez, you were anxious to tell us what you were thinking, so what were you thinking?
When?
When Mr. Kuriyama asked you what you were thinking this last week after you realized that, at least as far as a Big Five in Santa Monica, they don't sell real handguns, just things that look like handguns.
Well, they're handguns, they just use pellets. I was thinking about how I could be wrong when I was quite sure that I was right.
Yeah, well, you were quite sure you were right about your mother buying a gun at the sports mart that she bought at Best, right?
Well, I'm not doubting all of my memories. No,
Okay.
She did do that.
She did do that, but you had the name of that store wrong, too, didn't you?
Yeah, apparently she bought it at Best and not Sport Mart.
Let me ask you something. In your family, if your father was asking you questions and you didn't have complete answers with all the blanks filled in, what would happen to you?
Objection irrelevant.
Do you have a habit and pattern and custom when being pressured for answers to do something?
Objection irrelevant. Sustain.
I'd like to be heard on this, Your Honor.
No, you're asking.
That's absolutely relevant. If his dad would constantly question him and he was always expected to answer in a certain way, how do you think that that's not relevant when he is in a question-answer situation here? And same with, if he's in a question and answer situation with law enforcement or with Ozeal, he's he might be pressured to answer things a certain way if his father has, you know, made him think that that's how he's supposed to answer.
Why he answers something a certain way?
Asking if he has a tendency to fill in blanks.
Ask him, rather than that, which is irrelevant. Ask
If he did here.
something specific.
With respect to this conversation with a clerk in some sporting goods store, okay?
Yes,
In your memory, before you testified about this, were there blank parts?
of course.
Do you have a tendency with respect to answering that kind? Well, strike that. In answering those questions for Mr. Kuriyama, did you fill in the blanks?
I thought,
Objection, vague.
I didn't remember exactly what the clerk said, but I thought that there were real handguns there, and so I thought that he said that.
You thought he had actually said they were real handguns. Is that what you're saying?
Objection sustained, answer.
You thought he really said what?
That there were real handguns there.
Even though you didn't remember him really saying that.
Objection,
Objection sustained.
Did you actually remember him saying that?
I don't have a clear memory of, no, I don't have a memory of him saying those words, but I have a memory of discussing it, I thought.
Mr. Menendez, do you know what it's like when people are having a conversation where one's talking about apples and the other one's talking about oranges?
Objection, irrelevant.
Is it possible, given your memory, that you misunderstood the clerk?
It's
Objection, speculation.
it's possible, but it's possible.
Did you believe that you were looking at real handguns?
Yes,
Did you mention to him you needed a gun for protection?
yes,
You think a BB gun is useful for protection?
no.
Nothing further.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Mr. Menendez, you fill in the blanks, and you were kind of confused as to whether this was a Big Five store. Is that right? Is that what you're trying to say now?
Objection, that's a compound.
No, I don't mean to say that I fill in the blanks. I thought that we had a conversation about real handguns. I know that he didn't point to every handgun and say, no, that isn't real, but I thought that the other ones were real. I still...
Now, you were saying that you might have been confused about which store your mother had bought a gun a year earlier, correct?
Apparently I was.
You remember that gun you said when your mother got it, you were hoping that she would kill your father with it?
Yeah, I was hoping that.
Now, is it your understanding that your brother was confused about buying or going to the Big Five in Santa Monica, and that your own attorney was also confused as well as you?
I'm going to object on two different bases. Number one.
All right, objection sustained. Rephrase the question.
Okay. Could it be, Mr. Menendez, that your brother, you, and your lawyer were all confused about the Big Five store in San Diego, in Santa Monica?
Objection sustained. Rephrase the question.
Okay. Mr. Menendez, you've heard your own brother say that you went to the Big Five store in Santa Monica, correct?
Yes.
You've testified to that unequivocally. You said without a doubt, correct?
That I went there, I believe that without a doubt that I did.
And your attorney even asked you the question, are you sure you went to that Santa Monica
she
Big
got
Five
that
store?
information from me. She wasn't there with me when I was looking at the handgun.
So she wasn't confused.
Object to what I was or wasn't doing.
All right, just rephrase the question.
Are you saying that your brother was also confused about this?
Objection, speculation.
No, my brother didn't know it was a Big Five before he testified. I told him that 2 years ago when we were discussing, we were trying to figure out the store we went to in San Diego.
And you're positive about that?
Oh, I know that. He's sure that we went there to look at guns.
Okay.
And he apparently remembers that we were in the process of buying it. I don't remember that.
Thank you.
Right, I don't think you finished the answer.
All right, then if you want to have it finished, you can ask further questions.
May I do it from here? Did you finish, Mr. Menendez?
No, I hadn't.
Why don't you finish?
I can remember where I was.
Let me ask you a question. You said 2 years ago your brother wasn't sure what the store was where you addicted to handguns in Los Angeles?
Yeah, he apparently thought it was...
Objection, this takes the evidence. Overruled.
Yes.
And you convinced him it was a Big Five in Santa Monica?
I told him that that's absolutely what it was, because that's what I remembered it was.
Did him a favor?
No, I didn't do him a favor. I explained to him how we got there in Santa Monica and how it was 2 blocks away from the freeway and how I was absolutely positive about that, and that it was the Big Five.
Mr. Menendez, do you believe the 405 freeway is in Santa Monica?
I thought it was. I have a clear memory of...
Question is the freeway, the San Diego freeway. Do you believe it's in the city of Santa Monica?
Yes.
Nothing further.
All right, the blue jury is back in the courtroom, and now cross-examination before that jury only.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Menendez, you have testified that your father spoke with you about disinheriting you in September of 1988, correct?
He did disinherit me. That's what he told. Yes.
In fact, sir, he did not disinherit you. Isn't that correct?
Yes. Yes, that's correct.
Now, in September of 1988, did something occur that precipitated your father discussing with you that he was going to disinherit you?
He never told me why he was disinheriting me.
Do you recall something occurring during the month of September 1988 that gave you the idea that it was the reason why your father wanted to disinherit you?
I didn't know why he wanted to disinherit me, but something did occur in September of 1988.
Now, in July of 1988, you and your brother committed burglaries, correct?
Craig Signorelli, my brother, and I.
Now, there were 2 houses involved, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
The home of Mr. and Mrs. John List
Yes, sir.
and the home of Mr. and Mrs. Michael Ginsberg.
Yes.
Now, with respect to Mr. and Mrs. John List, are you saying that your brother was there?
No.
And according to the stipulation that was entered into earlier in the case, it reads as follows. Between July 1st, 1988 and July 10th, 1988, Erik Menendez and a friend were at the home of another friend, John List Jr., whose parents were away on vacation. While searching for the keys to a van, Erik and his friend found a piece of paper bearing the combination to the List family safe. After the safe was opened, Erik removed money and property. Correct?
Corrected, that's what the stipulation says, yes.
Now, you're saying that the friend that was with you was Craig Signorelli with respect to the List house, correct?
Yes, he was.
You're the one that entered the safe and took out money and jewelry, correct?
Objection, I thought we just had a ruling on this.
Yes, I did it with Craig.
You're the one that went into the safe, not Craig Signorelli. You went into the safe and removed money and jewelry, correct?
Actually, you're argumentative. It's not really, it's the same.
No, sir. If I did it alone, then Craig wouldn't have done it with me. He was with me when we were looking for the keys, as it says in there, and then we found the safe.
Mr. Menendez, who entered the safe?
Craig and I.
Were you bumping into each other as you entered it?
It's not a walk-in safe, sir.
Right. It's a floor safe, correct?
Yes.
Who entered the safe?
Nobody entered the safe. We stood outside of it, sir.
Did you remove something from that safe?
Yes.
And on July 14th, 1988, you and your brother entered the Calabasas residence of Michael Ginsberg, correct?
Yes.
And you removed a combination safe and its contents from a closet,
Yes.
a VCR.
I don't remember everything that was removed. If it's in there, it was removed.
This is part of the stipulation. China, silverware.
I'm not going to object to reading the stipulation. I think it's confusing words. And I would
Why
object
don't you
to...
rephrase the question so it's not confusing?
Do you remember removing with your brother from this house, in this residential burglary that you and your brother committed, a combination safe?
Yes.
Your Honor, asked and answered, you know.
You remember removing a VCR?
Not specifically.
China,
Yes.
silverware,
Yes.
a Solo Flex machine,
Yes.
an IBM computer,
Not specifically.
jewelry.
Yes.
Did you take money in that one as well?
Objection, it's in the stipulation, Your Honor. It's limited.
No.
Now, you and your brother were not caught on that, and you were actually turned in on September 16th, some over 2 months after you had committed these crimes, correct?
Objection, found and assumes facts not contended.
I turned myself in on September 18th.
September 16th?
16th.
Now, when you say you turned yourself in, your father was with you, correct?
My father and an attorney.
And your father accompanied you to the Malibu Sheriff Station, correct?
Yes, we came in with a U-Haul truck.
And he assisted in taking the property that you had stolen and turning it over to the sheriffs, correct?
Yes, sir.
Your father also had to make restitution to the victims, Mr. and Mrs. List and the Ginsberg, for property that was not returned, correct?
I was not aware of that, but I learned that later. It's in the stipulation.
What is it that was not returned that you remember?
Objection, Your Honor.
I don't remember what was not returned. I thought everything was returned. We bought it in a big U-Haul truck, and my father did not discuss with me. I know he had to pay some cash. I didn't know why. He didn't discuss with me those things.
Could it have been that you spent some of the cash that you took out of the List safe?
No, I don't believe I did.
You didn't spend any of that cash? Is that your testimony?
My parents found it in my, they found, I don't remember how much money, in a safe in my house.
Where was that safe?
In my closet.
How long after you had committed these crimes did they find this money in your safe?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to the use of the word crimes. These were handled as juvenile court matters.
Objection overruled.
Soon after.
How soon after?
I don't remember.
At some point you understood that your parents found some money in your safe, and did they ask you where you got the money?
Yes.
And what did you tell them?
I told them.
Told them what?
I told them that my brother, Craig, and I had gotten this from 2 houses.
Now, Craig was with you with regard to the List house, correct?
Yes.
You're the one that went into the safe, correct? Removed items from the safe.
It was Craig and I were right there. I did as well, yes.
And you and your brother entered into the Ginsburg residence, correct?
Yes.
Now, did you describe for your father exactly what you did in those two, the grand theft from the List and the residential burglary of the Ginsburgs?
No, I didn't describe it for him at all. I told him exactly where everything was, though.
Did you describe for him or relate to him anything that you had done with respect to those two break-ins?
I told him what we took and drove him to where we had it.
Now, when did this occur, as far as you telling your parents what you had done?
As far as me telling them, excuse me, I didn't hear.
What you had done?
I believe in August.
And it was on September 16th, 1988, that your father accompanied you to the Malibu Sheriff Station?
Yeah, exactly.
And I believe you told Dr. Oziel that you resented your father criticizing you and your brother for the way that you had done the burglaries?
Objection on this stage, Dr. Oziel.
No.
Did you, in fact, tell Dr. Oziel that your father had criticized you and your brother for the way you did those burglaries?
No, I didn't. What I told Dr. Oziel was that Dad told us that we were too stupid, we did them stupidly, and that we got caught, and that if we were going to do something, we should do it right.
So he wasn't mad about what they did. He was just mad that they got caught, apparently.
Did that go into your state of mind as to how you would commit the murder of your parents?
No.
That had nothing to do with it?
I don't.
What? It's nothing to do with anything.
No, not at all.
Do you remember talking to Dr. Oziel on October 31st and November 2nd and relating things that went into the mix of why you wanted to kill your parents?
Yes, but that's not when that was related.
Are you saying that you didn't talk about the residential burglaries in the October 31st or the November 2nd sessions?
We did, just not that statement.
In fact, you have indicated that your father discussed with you disinheriting you in September of 1988. Did the burglaries that you committed have anything to do with your father discussing with you the disinheritance?
My father did not discuss things with me. He told me I was disinherited. The burglaries play into it. He told me that I did them stupidly. I thought that it might have something to do with it, but he wouldn't have just disinherited me over a burglary issue. He was pretty angry with me throughout that summer, mostly because I was ranked 70 in tennis, and he thought I was a pretty big failure.
So it wasn't the fact that you did residential burglaries that made him upset and want to disinherit you. It was because you were ranked 70th in tennis?
The 70th was more important to him, from what I thought. I'm sure he was upset about the burglaries, there's no question about it. But I don't think that was the main...
He was more upset with Erik because Erik wasn't performing as well as he would have liked in tennis. And he didn't really care about the crimes, the burglaries, which they were like of their friends' houses. So it wasn't really, I mean, it was a crime, but they were doing it, like keeping it within the family. I don't know.
That may have been the straw that broke the camel's back, but I don't know exactly what played into it.
He was upset that you had committed these crimes, correct?
He was upset that, I would say he was also upset that we did it. He was upset that we did it poorly.
Now, did your mother and father, after you did the burglaries, did they see to it that you got some psychological assistance?
Your Honor, I think that begs the question. Calls for speculation.
We went to see Dr. Oziel because my attorney told me that in order to get the best possible verdict from the juvenile court that I went to, going to an attorney would play a large role in the attorney's evaluation of me or something along those lines.
Going to who? You said going to an attorney.
No, I'm sorry. Going to see Dr. Oziel or a therapist would be important to the court.
Do you recall, sir, that you had an interview with Detective Zoller on September 17th, 1989 in Cranberry, New Jersey. Do you remember that?
Yes, sir.
Page 32, counsel. Do you remember telling Detective Zoller that my parents basically made us get one after the Calabasas thing, referring to Dr. Oziel?
Yes, that's exactly what happened.
And you stated on that same date, same page, counsel 32, that Dr. Oziel is a very good friend of yours, that he spent a lot of time with you, with us basically, after the killings, correct?
Yes.
So Dr. Oziel, as of September 17th, was a very good friend of yours, wasn't he?
I viewed him as a friend of mine. There's no question about that.
And now that the courts have authorized him to testify in this case, he's not such a good friend of yours anymore, is he?
Objection, Your Honor, that's argument.
Sustained.
Now, do you recall testifying in front of the jury, sir, that your brother was a very good friend of yours, that he protected you throughout your life? Remember all of that?
Yes.
And that you love your brother?
I love him very much.
Do you remember saying, sir, on November 29th, 1989, that
Your Honor, for this, I would like a page cite and under.
page B, 16 and 17,
Okay, your version or ours? I'd like to take this.
All right, B16,
and 17, Your Honor. It's a 33.
and where are you starting?
Basically, I could paraphrase it or I could read it directly,
Where are you starting from?
where it says,
No, Your Honor, I would rather
Well, just tell me where it is so I can look at it.
okay, basically,
An idea.
it starts at, what about the police? Where it starts off, man. Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Menendez, do you recall having a conversation with Craig Signorelli on November 29th, 1989
Yes.
at Gladstone's restaurant?
No, but I'm sure that's right.
Do you remember in the conversation with respect to your brother, you said, man, I wouldn't be surprised if someone...
I'm going to object to reading it because we get this.
Overall.
Do you recall, Mr. Menendez, stating on that day, man, I wouldn't surprise if someone came out, if he actually did do it and someone came out and said he did it. Do you remember making that statement about your brother?
No, I don't. If you could show it to me, I would.
Then you stated the bravest human being in this entire world.
Objection, Your Honor, to reading that.
Overall. You remember that?
Not really,
Why
sir.
don't you show it to him?
Yes, Your Honor.
To get in context.
May I approach?
Yes.
Pages B16 and 17, 33.
Why are you showing 16?
To give me context.
Okay, yeah, I understand.
Mr. Menendez, do you recall having a conversation with Mr. Signorelli in which you're discussing you and your brother being suspects in the case?
That's not exactly how it went about, but yes.
And that you stated that if somebody knew that your brother was involved in the killing, he would have to be the bravest human being in this entire world to come forward with that information?
No, that's not at all what I said.
What did you mean by that? That, man, I wouldn't surprise if someone came out, if he actually did do it, meaning your brother, because you're referring to your brother, and someone came out and said he did it, you said the bravest human being in this entire world.
You're completely misreading it out of context. If you'd like me, I'd read it.
What did you mean by that?
I don't remember what I meant by it, but that's not what I said.
Is this, are you saying this transcript is inaccurate?
What I'm saying is the transcript is missing large portions because apparently the tape wasn't very good. I didn't know I was being tape recorded. And so there's portions in that tape which I don't know what I'm saying. In other words, I only got glimpses of my sentences. But in terms of the bravest human being in the entire world, I'm not quite sure what I meant by that, but I don't think I was referring to someone coming out and saying that my brother did it.
Now, the sentence just previous to that was, if someone came out, if he actually did do it, and someone came out and said he did it, you said, the bravest human being in this entire world.
Yeah. Why don't you inject the comment by Mr. Signorelli so we have it in context here.
Okay. You stated, man, I wouldn't surprise if someone came out, if he actually did do it, and someone came out and said he did it, and Craig Signorelli said, yeah, then they'd be going, yeah. And then you stated, the bravest human being in this entire world, and Craig Signorelli said, I remember Princeton. And you said, the bravest human being in this entire world. What did you mean by that?
I don't know if I can see it again. I can tell you, hopefully, what I meant by it, but I'm not quite sure. I wasn't referring to my brother, I don't think, in terms of someone coming out and saying he did it, and therefore that person would be the bravest human being in the entire world. I think what your interpretation is of it.
Okay, let me read a couple of sentences above that then. I'm not scared of my brother at all if I died, but, and Craig says, yeah, and you say, you know, you have nothing to fear about him. He won't touch you. And Craig says, I'm just worried about him. I don't know. He was referring to your brother, wasn't he?
Yeah, the whole conversation was about Craig Signorelli trying to get me to admit that I killed my parents because he was wearing a wiretap and the police were in a van outside. And I was telling him that I didn't do it.
Oh, we didn't know that, did we? That Signorelli was he was wiretapped and trying to entrap Erik into confessing? I didn't know that.
Because I had confessed to him before, and I had heard up in Santa Barbara that he was going around saying I did it. So in this conversation, I was trying to convince him in any way possible that I didn't do it. And at that point, he switched, well, maybe your brother did it. And that's, I think, the point where you're at.
So in fact, you had told Craig Signorelli, your best friend, that you had done it.
Well, yes.
And you had heard before that he had been telling people up in Santa Barbara?
Yeah, a friend of mine, Jade, told me that that's what the rumors were up in Santa Barbara, and of course I knew they were true.
And when you made the comment to Craig Signorelli on that day, you asked about the police. You said, what about the police? And Craig Signorelli said, I don't know about the police. And you said, talk to them? And he said, I have talked to them. And you said, what'd you tell them? And he said, I still think they think I'm a suspect. And you stated, surely you would have never told them anything that I told you like that, because I mean that's... And then Craig Signorelli stated, yeah, that's what I'll tell him. And then you stated, I was. And Craig says, hi, Erik. Erik killed his parents. Yeah. And then you stated, because I could use this. They don't know who suspect me. They suspect my brother. Do you remember that?
No, if you show it to me, I can confirm it.
I'm going to approach again, Ron.
Yes, this is Craig Signorelli telling me that the police still think he's a suspect. And then me asking him, you didn't, basically saying that you wouldn't have told people up in Santa Barbara when I told you. And him saying, of course not, I wouldn't have done that. And me saying that, I don't know, there's too many deletions, I don't know what I'm referring to here. And then I said they suspect my brother, because I knew that Detective Zola did.
You stated that they don't know who committed the crime, correct?
There's a deletion, that could be what it was.
They don't suspect you, but they suspect your brother. Isn't that what you said?
Yes.
And then later on, you talked about a person having to be the bravest human being in this entire world if they came forward, if your brother actually did do it, and someone came out and said he did it.
No, that's not what it says.
Flip back to page 17 of 33, sir, where it's highlighted in orange.
Yes.
What do you mean, sir, by I wouldn't be surprised if someone came out, if he actually did do it, and someone came out and said he did it, the bravest human being in this entire world? What did you mean by that?
Before I say the bravest human being in the entire world, Craig Signorelli says, yeah, then they'd be going, yeah, and then I say the bravest human being in the entire world, and then Craig says, I remember Princeton, and apparently I'm still in my thought, and I say the bravest human being in this entire world, and Craig says, yeah, that was deletion. I say, and then Craig says, do you think it's the mob? I don't believe I'm referring to someone coming out and saying my brother did it, and therefore that person would be the bravest human being in the entire world. But maybe I was. I mean, I don't remember the context of why that was said because there's too much missing.
Now, there doesn't appear to be anything missing in that this set of questions and answers, correct? There's no
before
asterisks
and after.
From here to here, where it says, if he actually did do it, and someone came out and said he did it, the bravest human being in this entire world. There's nothing in between. There's nothing that's left out. Correct?
Before that, I say I wouldn't be surprised if someone came out, and basically I'm saying if someone came out and said he did it. So I don't know why I'm explaining to you. I would also say that person would be the bravest human being in the entire world if I wouldn't be surprised if someone did come out and do it.
You stated if someone came out, if someone...
I'm going to object to this.
Sustained, we've been through this.
Now, could that have been... This is November 29th, 1989. Could that have been in reference to the threats made by your brother and you to Dr. Oziel?
We object to the form of the question. There's been no testimony that Mr. Menendez ever threatened Dr. Oziel.
I never threatened Dr. Oziel. I did the opposite. I'm the one that went to him in the first place.
Because he was a very good friend of yours, correct?
Apparently I said that on the 17th. I did think he was a nice guy, yes.
Now, when you made the statement about the person coming forward being the bravest human being in this entire world, were you referring to Dr. Oziel?
No.
Dr. Oziel coming forward?
Yes.
No, I wasn't referring to Dr. Oziel coming forward.
Were you telling Craig Signorelli, who you have said that you told what you and your brother had done, were you telling Craig Signorelli you better not say anything because Lyle will get you?
No, but I was telling Signorelli throughout that conversation that basically that I wish that he would not tell anyone, and he's trying to convince me that the police still think he's a suspect, so he couldn't have told anyone. I didn't know he was wiretapped.
You didn't know it at the time?
No, I didn't.
So what you said on that date was not anything that you had made up. You were actually saying what you meant on that day, or what you were feeling.
Yes.
And you had said that even though you had confessed to Craig Signorelli, you had heard that he had related that fact to other people in Santa Barbara, so you wanted to mislead him in this conversation.
Completely. I wanted to try to do it in the best way possible, that I didn't do it, and that Lyle didn't do it, and that to try to convince him of that because I had heard that he was going around telling people, and I suspected he went to the police.
So you wanted to confuse Craig Signorelli?
No, I wanted to try to convince him that I didn't do it.
So you were lying on November 29th?
Yes.
About your involvement in the killings of your parents?
Yeah, we were lying back and forth to each other, and it kept going on.
Now, you stated that you didn't want to be an actor, is that right?
Well, I enjoyed acting, and I had thought about it, and I really didn't know what I wanted to do after my parents died.
And on November 29th, you spoke to Craig Signorelli, and you told him that you wanted to make money in acting, correct?
I may very well have, if I could just see where I said it.
Okay. Was that your state of mind, that you wanted to become an actor?
No, I was, if I remember correctly, and I haven't seen it, I was telling Craig that I wanted to be an actor, I wanted to be a tennis player, I wanted to go into real estate, I wanted to set up a homeless charity, I wanted to do all sorts of things, and that I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do. With
respect to the real estate, there's been testimony in front of this jury that the purchase agreement for this penthouse suite in Marina Del Rey and the Marina City Towers for $990,000. Remember, you had indicated that you had made a deposit of $29,700?
Yes.
And that was simply a loan?
Yes, it was.
Now, you yourself wanted to buy property, correct?
Yes.
And on September 17th, you had told Detective Zoller that you intended to buy some property in the Marina Del Rey area.
I think I told him that I wanted to move to Marina Del Rey.
And buy a house, correct?
Yes.
And that this property, this $990,000 penthouse, was Lyle's idea, and it was supposed to be his house?
Well, if I remember the apartment correctly, it really had only one feasible room. I couldn't live there with Lyle, and I had no intention of living in the same apartment with Lyle anyway.
So,
a one-bedroom apartment that's almost $1 million? Can't even have 2 bedrooms? Jeez.
Instead of getting that $990,000 penthouse, you put an offer on a $1.5 million house in Marina Del Rey, correct?
Objection,
No.
as to approach.
Mr. Menendez, do you recall your testimony that the day that you came back after the memorial service in New Jersey, was the day that the computer people were there and that Casey Whalen picked you up from the airport?
I know that Casey Whalen picked me up from the airport. It's my best recollection that it was on September 1st, mostly because Casey's mother and his sister remember it was that day.
Okay, do you remember, Casey Whalen testified and he said that he picked you up from the airport on September 1st, 1989, correct?
Yes.
And that he took you back to the Beverly Hills house?
Yes.
And that he left your luggage in his car?
I don't remember if he testified to that.
Yeah, your suitcases were in the car and you went inside the house for a period of time?
Yes.
And that when you were upstairs checking on your answer machine, you were called downstairs and that's when you saw this computer man?
Yes, that's what he testified to.
And he said that he didn't remember a woman with him, with the computer man.
To this accumulation and recitation of other witnesses' testimony.
Ask another question, please.
Do you remember discussing this with Casey Whalen, the fact that there was this computer person at the house on the day that you came back from the East Coast?
I never discussed it with Casey.
And he had stated in his testimony, Casey Whalen, that Craig Signorelli was not there on that day.
Objection, Your Honor, to accumulating and restating other witnesses' testimony.
Sustained.
Is it your memory, sir, that when Casey Whalen came in and testified, he was accurate as to what he did on the day that he brought you home from the airport?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to that as calling for the opinion of the other witness, and I would ask you for
Objection overruled as to that question.
What Casey remembers and his sister and his mother remember is what they remember. My memory is more vague than theirs.
Okay, you said that you remember, I believe when your attorney asked you, you said that you remember specifically that the day you came back is the day that the computer man was at your house.
That's my best memory. That is my best memory, but I wasn't as sure about it until I heard that Casey, his mother and his sister confirmed that that is the day.
Well, could it have been the next day that the computer man came?
It is possible.
Okay, and so when Casey Whalen said that he didn't know where you were the next day, that he just took you and brought you home and took you to your car that day, could that be possible?
I don't know if he testified to that. I know he testified that the next day, if I came in on a Friday, then the next day he did drive me back to my house. If I came in on a Thursday, then it was the Friday that he took me back to my house. But those days went by so quick for me, I don't remember as much as I would like to.
Now, when you came back from the East Coast, normally before your parents were killed by you and your brother, would you put your plane tickets on their American Express card?
Before my parents died, would I do it?
Right. Would you have a record on their American Express card regarding plane flights that you took?
I don't know. They did everything. I don't know how they bought tickets or didn't, or by whom. Or
once your parents were killed, did you get yourself a credit card or anything of that sort?
Yeah, my Aunt Martha gave me a credit card.
Okay. Now, do you recall purchasing a ticket to come back from New Jersey with a credit card?
I don't recall. I know that most of my tickets that I bought went through my Aunt Terry, who was a travel agent. But very well could have. I just don't have a good memory of it.
Okay, do you remember where you were? Well, which airport did you fly out of to come back to Los Angeles from the East Coast?
My best recollection is that I flew out of Newark.
From where?
Newark.
Newark Airport?
Yeah.
Do you remember going to that airport and making the purchase?
No.
Of the ticket?
I don't have a good recollection of pretty much any of those events.
Do you know which airline you went on?
No.
You have no idea?
I flew so much during that time. I probably touched on every airline at one point.
Now, do you have any idea how it could be asked?
Again, what does his airline have to do with anything? This is the most ridiculous line of questioning. So stupid.
Where you, what day you flew on?
You're not going to object to the former question.
Sustained.
Do you have any recollection of that flight back from New Jersey, Newark, New Jersey?
I have a good recollection of meeting Casey at the baggage claim, but I've tried really hard to remember the exact day I flew back, where it was from, and the actual flight, because I know it's important, but I haven't been able to do it.
Do you remember how you got to the airport in New Jersey?
I don't. I know there's records indicating all sorts of things, but I don't know how I got there.
Now, was Casey Whalen accurate when he said that he picked you up from the airport in the baggage claim,
Yes, that he did.
and that he brought you home,
Yes, he did.
and that you needed to pick up some things,
Yes, I did.
and you went into the house and you went into your room and you checked on your messages?
Is the question, is Casey accurate, or is the question what did the witness do? Because we'd objected.
Sustained. Why don't you rephrase the
Okay.
question?
Is that what happened so far, that you went up to get your messages and Casey was in your room with you?
That could be accurate.
And that then you went to Casey's, actually a computer person came, correct?
I know a computer person came at one point, and I remember them vaguely.
And it was the day that Casey had picked you up from the airport?
That I cannot be sure of.
Now, you heard testimony from Casey Whalen that it couldn't have been Craig Signorelli there because he had taken you from the airport, correct?
No, I believe what he was saying is that it couldn't have been Craig Signorelli there because he was there.
Right, and that was the day that he picked you up from the airport, he testified.
Yeah, I think that's what he testified.
And your recollection on examination by your counsel was that you recall specifically that the computer person came on the day that you came back from the East Coast. So that supports what Casey Whalen said, is that correct?
Is that what I said?
Object to the former question.
It's compound.
Okay.
Sustained.
Mr. Menendez, do you remember testifying that when your attorney asked you if you have a specific recollection of when the computer man came, you said yes? Remember that?
Yeah, I know he came on a Friday.
And you remember that that was the day that you came back from the East Coast?
I believe that was the day, but that's been severely reinforced by his mother, his sister, and him saying that they thought that was the day. I cannot be sure.
And in fact, when they testified to that, they said that later that evening you all went to a Mexican restaurant, correct?
I believe they testified to that.
And that was the first day that you had arrived back from New Jersey.
I'm not clear again if the question is what the witnesses said, or?
All right, let's phrase it as a question, and
Is it-
so we can, intelligible question, please.
Is that your recollection, sir, that the day that you came back from New Jersey is the day that this computer man came?
That would be, I couldn't say for certain.
Would it be your recollection that it was some other day that the computer man came?
You mean the day that I got back?
Right.
That could be. I remember it more the other way than that way, but I just can't be, I can't tell you 100% on this.
When Casey Whalen may be wrong then about when he was there, is that right?
Objection, Your Honor, calling for speculation.
Sustained.
Now, you heard Craig Signorelli say that he was there when the computer man came, correct?
Yes, that's what he said.
And that he remembered the pregnant wife?
That's what he said, yes.
And that he recalled what occurred during the time when Mr. and Mrs. Heyman were there.
Your Honor, I'm going to object to this again. This is communicating and understanding of the witness' testimony.
Sustained.
Do you recall, sir, that the Heymans came in and they identified Craig Signorelli as a person that was with you?
Same objection, Your Honor. Other witnesses have testified.
Sustained.
Is it your testimony that it was Casey Whalen that was with you that day rather than Craig Signorelli?
Yes, I believe that's what everyone believes.
Excuse me, I believe that's what.
Everyone believes. That's what I believe too.
And when you say everyone, that doesn't include Mr. and Mrs. Heyman, and it doesn't include Craig Signorelli either.
No, I believe that Mr. or Mrs. Heyman described a man that was stockier than I was, with sandy hair and light eyes. And Craig Signorelli has black hair, black eyes, and is thinner than I am, whereas Casey has sandyish hair, blue eyes, and is a football player. And that's why I believe they're mistaken about
So when they came in to testify, they were wrong
wrong about.
about Craig Signorelli being there that day.
Yes, Casey was there.
And Casey says he was there because he knows he brought you home from the airport that day.
I'm going to object to this again, Your Honor. to why
Sustained.
Casey was
Sustained.
there.
Objection sustained.
You recall on the day after you got back from the airport, or from the East Coast, that you were brought back to your house in Beverly Hills, correct, to pick up your car?
Yes.
And you testified earlier that you would spend time at the Beverly Hills house during the day because you were just drawn back to the house.
My recollection is coming back to me that I think my grandmother was there during those later times, and that's why I went back to the house. But I did go back to the Beverly Hills house, I know that, after the airport.
Did your grandmother beat you back from the memorial service on the East Coast?
No, she didn't.
Okay, so when you came back, was anyone there at the Beverly Hills house?
The security guards.
Okay, and you had gotten a note that your brother had been there earlier?
Either that day or the other day, the day before.
It may have been the very day that you came back.
It may have been.
And do you remember Casey Whalen actually being there throughout the time that this computer man was there?
Yeah, my best memory is that Casey was there. I don't have I only remember bits and pieces of what happened when the computer person was there.
Okay, so the first day you were with Casey. Now, the second day that you were back in Los Angeles, do you recall anything about that day?
No.
Besides going to pick up your car in Beverly Hills?
I really don't even recall much about the day that I flew in, other than the fact that I flew in.
And that Casey Whalen picked you up?
Yeah, I know he picked me up at the airport because I have a definite memory of that, but I don't remember much about most of those days.
You do remember going out to dinner on the first day that you were there with Mr. Casey Whalen, his sister, and his mother?
I don't have a great memory of that, no.
You have a moment, Sean? Mr. Menendez, do you recall, just prior to flying back to the East Coast, where you were?
No, I don't.
You know, I have some U.S. Air records. They have the records comprised of
Your
2
name
pages.
approach.
All right, we can mark the exhibit as 292. Yes, you may approach.
Came back to Los Angeles from the East Coast.
You could help me with that.
Well, Your Honor, I'm going to object to being held if it doesn't refresh his recollection by looking at it.
Overall, he's just pointing to a particular portion of the document.
Does this mean that I flew back on that day?
Mr. Menendez, doesn't that indicate that you flew back to Los Angeles on August 31st, 1989?
Your Honor, I want to object to the question. This doesn't say anything about who flew anywhere.
Overall.
At 12:15, it says I flew at 12:15?
Yes, New York time?
That doesn't go along with my memory. Only because if you fly at 12:15, you get back to California close to 3:15, 4 o'clock. And I'm quite sure I was back by 2.
Now, isn't it a 3-hour difference between here and New York?
Yeah, I think it's a 6-hour flight and a 3-hour difference.
So Casey Whalen picked you up on August 31st, correct? That was not the day that the Haymans came to your house.
Well, I'd like to say this with the ticket, and it may be the ticket, but my memory is that I was back in Los Angeles somewhere between 12 and 2 o'clock, like Casey remembers. And if I flew on this ticket, assuming the plane left on time, I could not have gotten to the baggage before 4. And that doesn't go with my memory, but this may be the ticket.
I'm going to object, Your Honor. The question was whether it refreshed his recollection.
Overall, the answer will stand.
Mr. Menendez, you flew out of LaGuardia Airport, correct?
My recollection is that I flew out of Newark.
And isn't it true that you were with Mark Heffernan at the U.S. Open in New York on the night before you flew back to Los Angeles?
I don't know. I knew I was with Mark Heffernan in New York at a hotel which I stayed over because I remember seeing a match at the U.S. Open, and I met Mark there.
And Mark Heffernan's wife was with you at that hotel, correct?
Yeah, we all slept in the same room. There
in
were 2
fact,
beds.
you had a bodyguard with you, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
And the bodyguard took you to the airport the next morning on August 31st, correct?
Yeah, I know there are records of that, of a limo with him going to LaGuardia, but I know Detective Zoller on the 17th thought I left on the 1st with a ticket under the name of Erik Tam. And I have another record of a limousine picking me up on September 1st.
Mr. Menendez.
So the records are so jumbled that I wish I could tell you for sure. But I may very well have left on the 31st is what I'm saying. I just don't remember.
And isn't it true that the security guard that was with you was a New York police officer?
Yes, he was.
And he took you to LaGuardia. It wasn't New Jersey. It wasn't Newark as you had testified that you flew out of. Isn't that correct?
Rephrase the question.
You testified, sir, that you flew out of Newark, correct?
That's my best recollection, that I flew out of Newark.
And you recall being taken after the U.S. Open and after seeing your coach, Mark Heffernan, in New York, you indicated right now that the bodyguard took you to LaGuardia Airport, correct?
After the U.S. Open, I couldn't have gone to the U.S. Open that morning if the plane left at 12:15. But I know there's the record of that, and that's why I believe that I may have left on the 31st, and I can't be sure. But I simply don't remember. I believe he says he took me to a Delta flight too, and this is U.S. Air.
Now, who said they took you to a Delta flight?
I thought that's what the records indicated, that the car went to the Delta terminal. If I knew for sure, I'd tell you. I don't. And it may have been the 31st, it may have been the 1st, I don't.
If you had arrived in Los Angeles on August 31st and Casey Whalen saw a computer person there, not remembering a pregnant wife, did you have a computer person there on the 31st of August?
No, definitely not.
But you spoke, according to Mrs. Whalen, Mrs. Cohen, you spoke about the erasure of a computer the day you came into Los Angeles, correct?
Yes, I believe that's what they said. We did speak about it.
Now,
after I got the note from Lyle, and after the Haymans were there, and the Haymans said the computer was wiped, I knew what Lyle had done.
But the testimony was that you were talking about the erasure of the computer on the day you came back from the East Coast, the day that Casey Whalen picked you up, correct?
The testimony was that we were talking about the computer on a Friday night because Katie said that she knew she was working that night, and that's how she could pinpoint it to Friday, which was September 1st.
The testimony was that Casey Whalen said that you had your suitcases in his car, you simply went upstairs, you got your messages off of your answer machine, and when you came downstairs, the computer man was there, and he didn't remember any pregnant wife with him. Isn't that correct, sir?
Sustained. Sustained.
Now,
Sorry,
when you said, and Casey Whalen said,
Anybody else confused about the whole Casey Whalen and when he picked him up thing? I think Mr. Kuriyama is just confusing the jury because I'm confused by his questions.
that Craig Signorelli could not have been there that day because it was Casey Whalen who picked you up from the airport. That's inaccurate, isn't it? Because it happened the next day.
No. Go ahead.
Be witness. The object, Your Honor, that it's argumentative, it's not held.
Sustained.
Mr. Menendez, was Casey Whalen lying?
Objection, Your Honor.
Overruled. No, it's not just Casey, it's his sister and his mother, and they're not lying.
And they all recalled that the day that you came back from New Jersey, that was the day that this computer person came, correct?
I believe that's what they said. I know they said it was a Friday.
But you didn't come back on a Friday, you came back on a Thursday, didn't you?
I'm not sure of that.
Is this a good place to stop, Your Honor?
All right, we'll be in recess then, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry to keep you this late, but we were hopeful we could finish this, but we haven't, so we'll have to resume on Tuesday. Don't discuss this matter with anyone. Don't form any final...
We haven't because Mr. Kuriyama is the worst at asking questions, and we still have about 20 minutes left. So let's get through it.
opinions about it. Don't permit yourselves to be... Blue jury is in the courtroom. Good morning to you all. And we're ready to resume with the trial and the cross-examination of the witness, Erik Menendez, in front of the blue jury only. I'll remind you that you're still under oath.
Yes, sir.
You may continue your cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Menendez, directing your attention to November 29th, 1989, do you recall having a conversation with Craig Signorelli?
Yes, I do.
And in that conversation, do you recall talking about 2 screenplays that you were currently working on?
Yes.
And you discussed those screenplays?
Yes.
Were you excited about doing those screenplays, writing those screenplays?
Overall.
In a sense, yes.
And in that same conversation, do you recall talking about buying real estate?
I think we had part of the conversation was about real estate, about something to do, yes.
Do you recall indicating that you wanted to buy a house in Beverly Hills in that conversation?
No.
Do you recall talking about buying, in that conversation, buying a house for $8 million in Beverly Hills?
Yeah, we were talking about ideas that we were having back and forth, and I said one great idea would be to buy this house and develop it and this and that.
And also in that same conversation, did you speak about your uncle Brian Anderson?
Yes.
And how you had discussed with him investing millions of dollars and getting a return of $30 to $40 million?
It was actually the other way around, but I told him about how Brian, my uncle, had come to me and talked about the best way to handle the money would be to invest it in real estate and to go around buying it. And, yeah.
And in that regard, do you recall accompanying your brother to the Marina City Club?
Yes.
And you testified that you had loaned your brother this $29,700 for the $990,000 penthouse?
Yes, I did.
Now, on your own, did you make an offer on a $1.5 $1.495 million single-family residence in the Silver Strand of Marina Del Rey in February of 1990?
Object to the form of the question on what the house is worth is ever been determined.
All right, rephrase the question, please.
Yes. Mr. Menendez, do you recall in February of 1990 being shown a residence in the Silver Strand area of Marina Del Rey?
I don't specifically remember it, but I may have.
Do you recall a real estate agent by the name of Larry Cohen?
Yes.
Did he show you some properties in Marina Del Rey?
He showed me several different properties.
Houses that you were interested in?
Yeah, I wanted to move into a house since we were going to be selling, well, the estate was going to be selling all the other houses. So I looked at a few houses in Marina Del Rey.
In that regard, do you recall making an offer of $1.1 million on a particular piece of property in the Silver Strand area of Marina Del Rey?
Yes, I do.
Mr. Menendez, also in that November 29th, 1989 conversation that you had with Craig Signorelli, do you recall telling him that you carried a firearm?
Yes.
Why was that you carried a firearm?
I didn't carry a firearm.
Did you make the statement, "There's not much I can do, man, but I carry a gun around with me"?
Yes.
Was that in response to the people that had killed your parents? You were afraid of them?
No, actually, it was in response to Craig Signorelli trying to get out of me on tape that I killed my parents, and me trying to convince him, since I figured that he was going to the police, that I didn't do it, and I went as far as telling him that I carried around a firearm for protection.
Were you lying?
Yes.
Now, you didn't know you were being taped that day, did you?
No.
Mr. Menendez, recalling the 24th of August, the day that you and your brother had bought the Rolex watches, you recall that day?
Yes.
And you used a credit card that day, correct?
I don't know.
You don't recall?
I didn't do the buying. I really wasn't concerned how he bought it.
With respect to the Rolex watch purchase and the money clips, did you see your brother take out $15,000 in cash, currency?
If you say he bought it with a credit card, he bought it with a credit card. I just don't remember.
You had indicated that you had gone earlier in the day and had made some purchases of, I believe, ties and coats. Would that be fair to say, at Bullock's?
No. I don't remember any ties, but I know I went there because I didn't have a sports jacket, and I needed to wear one to the funeral.
Mr. Menendez, do you recall making two purchases on credit cards at Bullock's?
I'm not going to object to this. And ask for approach. Improper rebuttals.
Overall.
If I did, I did. I don't remember.
I believe you had testified in direct examination that you had purchased some slacks that you had to get altered that day?
Objection to states of testimony.
Rephrase the question.
Okay. Mr. Menendez, didn't you testify that you had bought a garment and that particular day you had to have it altered?
Yeah, I bought a sports jacket. I don't remember buying any slacks, but I believe I had to have something altered. A sports jacket, I think it was. I'm not sure.
And that was at Bullock's?
I believe I had it altered at Bullock's. I mean, I just don't remember now.
Do you recall, sir, that there were two purchases at Bullock's, one for the ties and coats at $1,663.51 that was put on a credit card? Remember that?
Okay.
Do you recall that?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to this. There's been no discovery of this.
Did you wish to approach? As to the last two questions, and one of which was answered, the other question was not answered. The last question was not answered, the previous question was, and the answer. Those two questions and the one answer, the court sustains the objection. Those questions.
What? I'm so confused what he just said. What?
And the one answer are stricken, and the jury is admonished to disregard them. All right, you may continue.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Menendez, do you recall actually going to shop with your brother prior to going to the jewelry store to get the Rolex watches and the money clips?
What do you mean by shop? I went there specifically to buy a sports jacket.
Okay. Was there any other purchases that you made that day besides the sports jacket?
I don't remember any.
Were you with your brother all the time that day?
I know I went to Bullock's with him because I didn't have any suits or any sports jackets, any of that.
You had indicated that you had bought a coat, is that correct?
Yes.
Did you have to buy some slacks to go along with the coat?
I don't think so. I mean, I think that I had slacks at my house. I know that I wore slacks on different occasions, but I just don't remember.
Okay. Do you recall pulling out cash at any one of those transactions to pay for the purchase that day?
That reform the question, Your Honor?
Overall.
I don't think so. It was an expensive coat. I don't think I would have paid in cash.
Is it your belief that credit cards were used, sir?
Probably.
Mr. Menendez, you had indicated that you believed the BBC stood for what?
The question is bigger.
Rephrase the question.
Okay. Do you recall being asked on direct examination about what you believe BBC stood for?
Not specifically.
Do you recall testifying that you believed Dr. Oziel must have been referring to the British Broadcasting Company?
I remember doing that on cross.
And this movie that was discussed, you believed was on the British Broadcasting Company?
I don't know what he was referring to. It's in his notes exactly. I was just giving my best guess.
Now, would another one of your guesses be the Billionaire Boys Club?
I don't know what shows Dr. Oziel watches or what he was referring to there. I can only give you the only reason I can guess is by the language of when he says on the BBC, and so I don't know.
And in fact, what he was referring to is something that you had stated to him, that you had watched a movie on the BBC, correct?
Judge, can I ask the officer?
No, that's not what he was referring to.
Now, isn't it true that you know the BBC to mean the Billionaire Boys Club?
The BBC
Yes.
are initials for Billionaire Boys Club.
Asked and answered before the other two juries.
There was an area here that was reserved.
Yes.
And
Is that,
what was your answer?
Yeah, that is, the initials BBC are for several things. One of them is Billionaire Boys Club, definitely.
do you recall on November 29th, 1989, having a discussion with Craig Signorelli about forming a group of 4 people?
It wasn't really a discussion. I was telling him an idea I had.
Okay. And you were saying that you wanted to form a group of 4 people that you could trust, correct?
Yeah, I specifically remember doing that. I was doing that on purpose.
And that these people would be working under you, and they would be making $1 to $2 million a year, correct?
At that point, I was just spinning my wheels. I didn't have any idea.
Do you recall Craig Signorelli say to you, kind of like in BBC? Do you recall that question?
Yeah, I recall that.
And do you recall your answer, kind of like in BBC, but that you know it's just everywhere? Do you remember making that statement?
Yeah.
Do you recall that you stated that you wanted to get something that would set you apart from the other people in this company?
No.
Do you recall talking about a Rolex watch, the one that you would have to buy in a, I believe you put it, you'd have to order it. It's blue that fades into black. Do you remember making that statement relative to this group that you were going to form? Everyone would have to get this Rolex watch?
No, if you can show me.
May I approach, Your Honor? Okay. It's page A3. Menendez, I'm going to show you the transcript. It's page A3 of 10 regarding the conversation that you had with Craig Signorelli on November 29th, 1989.
Yeah.
Did you take a look at this section?
Yeah, now I remember.
And when you were discussing this group of 4 people that would make $1 to $2 million, and you discussed having a Rolex watch, what were you talking about?
I was specifically talking about forming a group of people that you could trust, because I was trying to send Craig a message that I didn't trust him, and that I believed that he was telling people what I told him. And so I was saying, yeah, I wish, it wasn't something that I was actually planning on doing. I was saying, yeah, I wish I could form this company. I want to do this. These are some people who I can trust. And he said everyone should have a handshake. Everyone should wear something that is status, just sets them apart. And I was trying to say, I don't trust you. I think you're telling the police. And this was one of the things I was doing.
Mr. Menendez, were you going to start the British Broadcasting Company?
No, that wasn't an idea I had.
So what did you mean by the BBC?
Objection, Your Honor. Say the BBC.
That's what Craig said.
And you agreed with him, it was like the BBC. What did you mean by that?
The Billionaire Boys Club.
Okay. Now, you also made the statement, sir, that you know, and if you leave the group, fuck, I would not betray that group. What did you mean by that? I
was telling Craig that I didn't trust him and I thought he was betraying me.
And what would happen to those people that betrayed you?
Objection, Your Honor.
I don't know. I was just making the statement to sort of tell him, you know, you're betraying me. But I'm not really a confrontational person like that, and I didn't know how to say it to him. So I was trying to give him the best message I could.
You were trying to threaten him?
Objection, Your Honor.
No, I could never hurt Craig. I was just saying, basically, that I was hurt. I thought he was a friend of mine, and now I hear up in Santa Barbara that he's telling everyone what I told him. And so I'm trying to do my best now to convince him that I wasn't involved in the killing.
So you were mad at him because he was telling the truth, that you indeed were involved in the killing of your parents, correct?
No, I wasn't mad at him for telling the truth. I was mad at him for telling people something that I told him at a time when I wanted his help. And
You told him in confidence. He trusted him and didn't think he was going to go off and blurt it all over town, but that's exactly what he did.
And that's all.
Now, Mr. Menendez, Dr. Oziel had testified that you told him that you believed that you couldn't be connected to the crime because the guns were purchased in San Diego. You couldn't be connected to the guns. The prints in the house were your prints, et cetera. Do you remember that testimony?
Do I remember he testified to that, or is that what
Yes.
happened?
Do you remember that testimony?
Yes.
And do you remember testifying in front of this jury that you believed from the first day that you would get caught? Do you remember that testimony?
What I said is that I believed from the moment after that I would get caught. There was too many things the police could find.
Do you recall, again, November 29th, 1989, in your conversation with Craig Signorelli, for counsel, it's B19 of 33, that you stated, "I've known from the beginning, no clues, no one heard anything." And then again, at B22 of 33, in the same conversation with Craig Signorelli.
I'm misquoting the statement of the witness on the transcript.
Page 19.
B1933 on its first page. Statement 33.
Very well, Your Honor. You remember making this statement, sir? "I've known from the beginning, no clues, no one heard anything. People heard things that in an unintelligible." Do you remember making that statement?
No. Could I?
read out of context about the response in the next statement.
Well, his answer is no, he doesn't remember that. And I believe you want to look at that.
Yeah.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I remember.
Okay, when you say you've known from the beginning, there were no clues, no one heard anything, what did you mean by that?
What I was saying is, after I tell him that I don't know who did it, and he's telling me, well, why don't you check it out? People, you should know. Don't you want to find out who did it? And I say to him, Craig said, "You're not going to check it out anymore?" And I said, "How am I going to check it out?" And he says, "I don't know." And I say, "That's a good question. How can I check it out? I know they're not going to find anyone. I've known from the beginning, no clues. No one heard anything. People heard things that..." And then it goes on about firecrackers in the middle of August.
Okay.
I wasn't referring to me, though.
Mr. Menendez, when you said, "I know they're not going to find anyone," isn't that what you told Dr. Oziel too?
No, you're misunderstanding two conversations. One in which I'm telling Craig, the reason I'm not going to go investigate myself is because they're not going to find anyone. And with Dr. Oziel, I told him that the police don't know anything, and that the only way they could find me was through the guns in San Diego.
Mr. Menendez, do you recall telling Craig Signorelli on November 29, 1989, regarding the people that committed this crime, the shooters of your parents? You stated, "Man, we're talking about special hitmen, special shotguns, and knew exactly what they were doing in and out of the house. No one saw anything, no one heard anything." And Craig Signorelli responding, "Doesn't make sense." And you responding, "We're talking serious hitmen."
Yeah.
Now, you believed that you and your brother had done this in a way that you would not get caught, correct?
No.
And that's
Just
what you're
the
talking about.
opposite. No, you're just pulling it out of context again. Craig and I are again having a conversation, it's the same conversation, about the fact that nobody knows, and he keeps pressing me, "Well, don't you want to find out who did it? Aren't you going to find out who did it?" And he's apparently trying to get me to say something because he's on tape. And I'm telling him, these were hitmen, I don't know who did it, no one heard anything, I'm not going to be able to find out who did it, these are serious people, they knew what they were doing, etc. And that's what's happening.
This statement that you make mirrors what Dr. Oziel said. You said that you didn't think you were going to get caught. You didn't think there was any way for you and your brother to have to stand trial in this case. Isn't that correct?
Argumentative, ask the answer.
No, it doesn't mirror what Dr. Oziel said in the slightest.
I have nothing further at this time, Lyle.
Any redirect?
No question.
Oh my goodness, finally he's done. That was, whew. We didn't need all of those questions for sure. So we are done with all of the testimony. So we will continue next week on Tuesday with closing arguments for Lyle, and then we'll do closing arguments for Erik. They have two separate sets of arguments because two separate juries. So we will pick up on Tuesday with Lyle, part one of closing arguments. And thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for being here. Thank you for contributing to the conversation about the boys. I know I call them the boys and they're older than me, but whatever. I still feel like they're young kids. um, I know they're older than me, whatever. They're memorialized or more immortalized as young kids in this context during the trial. So to me, they feel like they need a hug. Like they're just young, frightened kids. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys on Tuesday with part one of closing arguments for Lyle. And thanks again for watching. Take care. Bye now.